Chapter 1. 1445 of the Gregorian calendar, the 10th year of the Ming dynasty. In a house in Fujian's Jianghu prefecture, an old woman was on the verge of death. She was lying on the bed, and before she died, she grabbed the arm of a 15-year-old boy tightly. "Brother 6, after I leave, you're the one I'm most worried about. Mother, don't go. Qindong misses you." The boy was handsome, but his eyes were filled with sadness and fear. He was afraid that his mother would leave him. He was afraid that the person who loved him the most in the world would leave him. But in the end, the old woman let go of his powerless arm and slowly closed her eyes. At that moment she was so peaceful and so kind. At this moment, sixth brother also closed his eyes and fainted beside the bed. The girl with the face of a porcelain doll had clear and bright eyes, like a clear spring, like watery grapes. Her gaze was unforgettable. She was currently staring at the man in the camouflage singlet who was moving in front of her. Her gaze followed the man's body as he moved. Looking closely, there was joy and satisfaction in her eyes, but more than that, there was confusion and curiosity. She only knew that the young master in her eyes had completely changed. In the past, he only liked to sit quietly in one place, saying, "That's right." Even when he saw Tiger's Mane sometimes brandishing his sword and stick, he would also comment that it was the bravery of an ignorant man. But now, not only did he like sports, he even seemed to be more active in it. What's more, the clothes he was wearing were something she had never seen before. It was so strange, so simple. But looking closely, it was so convenient and comfortable. After old Madam left, the young master's personality changed a lot, but I don't know if it's good or bad. Holding her red cheeks, Qiao Yin's eyes were filled with confusion. Qiao Yin, the maid, didn't know. Tiger's Mane, the study companion and servant, also didn't know that the young master in front of them had been reborn. The young master's name was Yang Jitong. His courtesy name was Qindong, meaning the sun rises from the east. His father was one of the original ministers of the Ming dynasty, Yang Rong of the Three Yangs. Yang Rong, original name Daoying Zirong, courtesy name Yanren, was from Jian and today's Jianghu, Fujian. Position: Guanglu Daifu, pillar of the state, Shaoshi, concurrently holding the position of Minister of Works. Influenced by his family, Yang Guitong studied the 4 books and 5 classics from a young age. When he was 13, he became a Xiuzai and became one of the scholars. Ever since he was young, he had been taught by the saints and the ancients. Until a month ago, when his mother, Yang Lushi, passed away due to illness, he fell into a deep sleep and became what he was now. As the ancients said, rivers and mountains can change, but one's nature cannot change. Even the death of his father 5 years ago and his mother a month ago could not change a person's nature. The reason why Yang Qindong had changed so much, from quiet to active, from civil to military, was because he had changed into a different person. Yang Dong was born under the red flag and grew up in the spring breeze. He was a 100% modern person. Strictly speaking, he was an outstanding and ambitious young man. After graduating from high school, he joined the army. Relying on his own ability, he grew from an ordinary soldier to an outstanding revolutionary cadre step by step. He entered the army's most powerful Wolf Fang Brigade action team. Along the way, who knew how many contributions he had made? But if you walk by the river, how can your shoes not get wet? During a mission, his left leg was injured and he was no longer as agile as before. In the end, he was taken care of by the chief and assigned to the armory department, where he held the glorious position of armory division chief. Originally, he thought that he would spend the rest of his life like this. When he reached the age, he would transfer to another place, marry a wife and have children. He would live a normal and happy life like an ordinary person. Who would have thought that a new batch of military resources had just arrived at the big warehouse, the abbreviation for the largest warehouse in the final assembly? When he was inspecting and registering there, a huge black vortex suddenly appeared above his head. When he woke up, he came to this courtyard and became Yang Qindong, who was called Young Master. This made Yang Dong know. What should be called Yang Qindong did not understand was that there was a pale 5-pointed star on his arm. He remembered that there was no such thing before. Soldiers were not allowed to have tattoos on their bodies. When he accidentally touched it, he turned around and returned to the warehouse. The rows of guns, piles of bullets, steel cannons, and even a large number of tanks and helicopters that had just arrived. Countless daily necessities appeared in front of him. He could reach out and touch it. The cold feeling of the gun made Yang Qindong know that this was not a dream but a reality. Thus, a bold idea came to his mind. He picked up a brand new Type 95 assault rifle. Then the idea came to him and he walked out and came to the room of the Yang family's old house. Luckily there was no one else in the room. Otherwise, who knew how scared they would be? His left hand touched the pale five-pointed star again, and he was able to return to the warehouse. When he put down the gun and came out again, his whole person seemed to have changed. Getting used to new things and adapting to different environments was one of the compulsory courses for Wolfang members. With the idea of taking things as they came, Yang Qindong had already given up on the idea of going back. On the contrary, he was secretly happy. He had returned to the age of 15. The most important thing was that his body was healthy. This was something that could not be bought with money. Of course, what made him most excited was the secret under the five-pointed star. In this era, his advantage was too obvious. Thinking about the piles of firearms, his body could not help but tremble. Everyone had a dream of being a hero. Yang Qindong was especially so. Otherwise, he would not have joined the army and would not have worked so hard to join Wolfang. It was just that he was limited by the environment. He could only complete some secret missions, and sometimes he could not even announce his name. But here, in the middle of the Ming dynasty in the Zhengtong era, he knew that many things that he only dared to think about before could be realized. The first thing that the excited Yang Qindong did was to recover his physical fitness. This might be difficult for others, but for him, a veteran with 21 years of military experience, everything was so natural. Morning jogging was the first change. But his morning jogging was not just a slow jog, but a regular 5-kilometer training. This was just the beginning. As his body gradually recovered, he would continue to increase his training. The first person to adapt to Yang Qindong's change was Tiger's Mane. This study companion was bought by the Yang family when he was young. It was destined that he would rise and fall with the young master in the future. Tiger's Mane also liked to fight. In the past, the young master did not allow him to move. Now, he actually took the initiative to play with physical fitness training. How could he not be ecstatic? Although the maid, Xiao Yin, did not understand the young master's change, as long as the young master was happy, she was happy. In her eyes, Yang Qindong had long become her land, her sky. For this, Yang Qindong had to thank his family background. Although the Yang family was considered a large family, the remaining memories in his mind told him that in this life, although his parents were no longer around, he still had 5 older brothers and 7 older sisters. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for him to have freedom. But they were all in the capital, Beijing. As the youngest, he was the only one who stayed in his ancestral home, Jianghu Prefecture. Because of this, he had more autonomy and could do whatever he wanted. In the months since he arrived, Yang Qindong quickly adapted to his current life. His physical fitness had also improved significantly. But some habits still gave him a headache. For example, he had to deal with urine and feces every day. Chapter 2. In the Ming dynasty, the wooden barrel used for drinking, called huzi during the Han dynasty and mamatsi during the Song dynasty, made Yang Qindong very annoyed. He decided to change and start from this matter. At the same time, he could also take the opportunity to earn a sum of money. Doing things was always inseparable from money. This was the same everywhere. Speaking of which, the Yang family's old house was not small. When his mother was alive, there were many people who served her. There were also artisans and blacksmiths who served the family. In addition, the old master, Yang Rong, used to be the minister of works. The people under him were extremely capable. Soon, the old house's housekeeper, Yang Hai, was called over. When he learned that the 6th young master wanted an artisan to do something, he called Li Xuanfu over. "Greetings, 6th young master." Li Xuanfu was a simple and honest man. There was a visible patch on his cotton clothes. It was true that the artisans were skilled, but under the concept that everything was inferior, only studying was important. Artisans were the last profession and craftsmen were the most insignificant. As a result, their status was too low. Not to mention that they were at the mercy of others, some of them were even born as artisans. Everyone was divided into 3, 6, and 9 classes at birth. It was difficult to change. Shunfu had 5 children and it was because he worked in the Yang family. Otherwise there would be more patches on his clothes. "Master Li, I have an idea here. I have already drawn it. Please take a look." Yang Qindong did not have the consciousness of being superior to others. He was used to everyone being equal. Naturally, he was very polite to people. "No, 6th young master, you can just call me Xuanfu like how you call housekeeper Yang." Li Xuanfu had a frightened expression. Although Yang Qindong was only 15 years old, he did not dare to look down on him at all. This was because he knew that he was already a scholar. In the future he would definitely be an official. How could someone like him compare to him? Looking at Li Xuanfu's nervous expression, Yang Qindong finally remembered his current position. He also knew that some things were very difficult to change, so he was not in a hurry. Instead he smiled and said, "Shun Fu, come and take a look at this picture of mine. This is what I think." When Yang Qindong explained his intention for the first time, Shun Fu already knew what the sixth young master wanted to do. It had a seat with a water tank and a flushing valve, a three-ball valve that controlled the flow of water in the water tank, and a U-shaped bent pipe. At the same time, it was an all-ceramic design. For some of these parts, Yang Qindong had already prepared them. These were all parts in the warehouse. Looking at these exquisite accessories, Li Xuanfu couldn't bear to put them down. He was also fantasizing about what they would look like after they were completed. Yang Qindong didn't disturb Li Xuanfu's thoughts. He sipped his tea and waited until he saw Li Xuanfu's gaze turn from wandering to determined. He smiled and asked, "What do you think? Can you make it?" "With the composition of the sixth young master, it should be possible," Li Xuanfu replied with some confidence. "Very good." Chu Fifan couldn't help but snap his fingers out of habit. Then he pointed at the accessories he brought and asked, "Can these things be imitated? If it's changed to iron, it won't be a big problem." Li Xuanfu didn't know what those white plastic pipes were. Under normal circumstances, these would only appear in the 19th century. That was why he said to change to other materials. Yes. Hearing that it could be imitated, Yang Qindong didn't care about the problem of the material. He just wanted to mass-produce it. In this way he could sell the toilet and naturally the profits would roll in. As the saying goes, you can't trap the wolf without sacrificing the child. If the reward and punishment couldn't be clear, the effect wouldn't be too good. Yang Qindong immediately promised that if the toilet was completed, he would reward him with 10 taels of silver. 1,000 coins in the Ming dynasty was equal to 1 tael of silver. 4 taels of silver was equal to 1 tael of gold. When the reward of 10 taels of silver was announced, it could be seen that Li Xuanfu's eyes were shining. At this moment he was really excited. In the past, if the master wanted to make something, he just needed to provide the materials. As for the reward, he didn't dare to think about it. It was as if everything was justified. From this, it could be seen that the people at that time didn't think about innovation at all. If they had the strength and thought, they might as well do other work to supplement the family. Yang Qindong was naturally accustomed to it. He just wanted to use this kind of exciting method to make everyone work for him. It turned out that this was a win-win situation. He took out all the 500 taels of silver that his mother left for him and gave it to Li Xuanfu. If you want a horse to run, you have to let the horse eat grass. He was very clear about the principle. "Young master, just give the money to this servant." Xiao Yin, who saw everything from the side, reached out and took the money. Perhaps in her eyes, the young master taking out all of his family's assets for a child's play really made her feel uneasy. After interacting with each other for a month, Yang Qindong naturally knew who was truly concerned about him. He knew that it was Xiao Yin who was worried. He smiled and said, "All right, then Xiao Yin will take charge of this matter. Xuanfu will cooperate." Originally, Li Xuanfu was somewhat trembling when he saw that such a large sum of money was going to be handed to him. Since Xiao Yin had jumped out at the right time, he was naturally happy to accept it. He nodded his head vigorously and expressed that he would definitely cooperate. After sending the two away, Yang Qindong, who was waiting for the good news, rubbed his palms as he watched the two leave. This money was being spent too quickly. He had to think of something to do and get more money first. As the saying goes, if the house has food, the heart will not panic. Yang Qindong's experience in his previous life told him that if a person wanted to do something they liked, the first thing they had to do was increase their own ability. Then the question was, what was ability? In short, it could be summed up in 2 words: money and power. Right now he was still young, only 15 years old. There was no need to be too anxious about the issue of power. However, he had to hurry up when it came to money. Money didn't care about age. He turned around and returned to the study. His figure flashed and disappeared. The large warehouse didn't only contain equipment. It also contained the daily necessities of the soldiers who had come from afar. Walking past rows and rows of cold boxes filled with weapons, he arrived at his former dormitory. He didn't know where the people here had gone when the dark vortex came. In any case, he couldn't see a single person. However, their belongings had been perfectly preserved. There was even an intact library among them. Walking in, he casually picked a few novels that he would be familiar with in his future life. Then he went to a large box filled with seasonings and took some unopened MSG cooking wine, tender meat powder, and pine nut powder. Next, he passed by the daily necessities section and took some toothpaste, toothbrushes, soap, towels, and other items. Finally, he took a large box of chewing gum and put it in his pocket. Only then did he return to the study, satisfied. That night Yang Qindong went to the kitchen by himself. Under the astonished gaze of the cook Yi Qiu'er, he made a few dishes and took them away. This scene attracted many people from the old residence to watch. The old lady's mourning period hadn't completely passed yet. Why was the sixth young master already acting up? Chapter 3. Yang Qindong didn't know that his actions had attracted everyone's guesses and imaginations. He just wasn't used to the taste of food and wanted to improve himself. Speaking of which, to become a member of the Wolfang Battle Squad, one had to complete countless missions. Sometimes, in order to get close to the target, one would even have to go undercover and disguise themselves as people of various professions. He had once worked as a chef for 2 months in order to get close to the target. Naturally, his skills weren't bad. Just as he skillfully threw the sliced meat into the pot, a scream came from outside the door. Just from this scream, Yang Qindong could tell the identity of the person who came. Who else could it be other than the servant girl, Qiao Yin? Li Xuanfu, who had just arranged for the craftsman, was wondering if the young master needed to be served when he heard someone say that he was in the kitchen. He immediately rushed over. As soon as he entered, he started making a fuss and shouted, "Young master, a gentleman should stay away from the kitchen." Wearing the apron he took from the big warehouse, Yang Qindong chuckled to the side. He didn't explain anything but continued to turn the spatula in his hand. Immediately, a fragrant smell began to spread, increasing one's appetite and making one want to eat to their heart's content. Young master, what are you making? Why is it so fragrant?" Qiao Yin seemed to have forgotten her purpose for coming. She was sniffling with a look of enjoyment on her face. Yang Qindong reached out and unconsciously scratched the bridge of her nose. He chuckled and said, "Little greedy cat, go wash your hands. It'll be done soon." In this month, Yang Qindong had long felt Qiao Yin's reliance and trust in him. Unlike the other servants of the Yang clan's old residence, who all called him the sixth young master, only Qiao Yin and Tiger's Mane called him the young master. This simple missing six already proved a lot of things. This showed that they truly treated him as their master, and the others were only forced to call him that because of their status. Don't think that just because you are a servant, you will obey your master. Throughout history, there are many examples of weak emperors and strong ministers, not to mention a small Yang family mansion. Yang Qindong saw everything with his own eyes. Based on the principle that he would treat anyone who treated him well, he would treat them well. Naturally, he treated Qiao Yin, who had rushed over to advise him, with courtesy. This action of scraping the bridge of his nose was something that came from his heart. Qiao Yin, who was completely captivated by the delicious taste, seemed to have forgotten her status at this moment. She simply laughed foolishly and stared unblinkingly at the stir-frying meat slices in the wok. It was as if she would fight with her life on the line if anyone dared to steal from her. "Young master, can I try it later?" A weak voice rang out. It was the kitchen manager Yi Qiu'er. Compared to Qiao Yin's delicate appearance, she looked more burly. But it was precisely because of this physique that she had secretly defeated countless people and become the head chef of the Yang family mansion. She had just called him the sixth young master, but now she had removed the six. This was enough to prove that her mentality was changing. This was the pressure and change that a capable person could bring to others. Since there were people to serve him, Yang Qindong naturally wouldn't cook every day. The heavens had taken care of him, giving him a transmigration and a healthy body. Wouldn't it be a huge waste to spend time on cooking? Sure, Yang Qindong replied concisely. He also had the thought of testing the other party. If this person changed her attitude in the future, her loyalty could be used. If not, she would have no hope in future. At the very least, he could still fire a kitchen maid as the sixth young master. That night, Yang Qindong, Qiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, Yi Qiu'er, and the old butler Yang Hai ate together. This was perhaps the most delicious meal the four of them had ever eaten. After all, MSG and tender meat powder hadn't appeared in that era yet. Even the experienced and knowledgeable old butler Yang Hai couldn't help but sigh in admiration after eating. "This dish is truly fragrant. I think it's comparable to the imperial chefs of the capital." Yang Hai had been with Master Yang Rong for many years and had the fortune to taste many of the so-called treasures of the imperial family. His words were somewhat fair. When Qiao Yin and the others heard this, they nodded their heads repeatedly to express their agreement. Only Yang Qindong smiled and said, "If Uncle Hai thinks the taste is really good, then call my cousin Yang Fu over. I think he'll be happy to work with us." "That's right, young Master Fu has a restaurant in Jianghu Prefecture. There's an endless stream of customers there every day. It's a good source of income." Yang Hai patted his head in realization. Having finished eating, he stood up and walked out. Yang Chendong didn't need to interfere with chores like picking up the dishes. After eating, he took Tiger's Mane for a walk around the courtyard. After digesting the food, he returned to the study. Xiao Yin had already prepared the ink. When she was eating, she heard the young master say that he wanted to write something. She was so happy that she almost choked. In an environment where the Shi group was the ruling group, the imperial examinations were undoubtedly the path to the heavens for many people. What's more, with Yang Chendong's family background, who knew how many descendants and resources his father had left behind in the imperial court? As long as he was nominated, his path would be much better than others. In particular, Yang Rong, who had a son at an old age, had personally taught Yang Chendong. At the time, he was so envious of his brothers. The previous owner of this body didn't disappoint. At the age of 13, he became a scholar and was known as a child prodigy. Who knew how many people were optimistic about Yang Chendong's future because of this? And Xiao Yin was the most optimistic among them. In her heart, the young master was simply a literary star who had descended to the mortal world. As long as he worked hard, a great future would be in front of him. A while ago, when she saw the young master begin to exercise and do some strange exercises every day, she wanted to advise him. However, when she considered that the young master's identity was indeed much more solid than before, she suppressed her urge. Now that she finally saw the young master begin to study again, how could she not be happy? After grinding the ink until it was clear enough to reflect a person's figure, Yang Chendong walked into the study and sat down on a chair. With a heroic spirit, he said, "Prepare the brush and ink." "It's all ready." "Young master, what are you going to write today?" Xiao Yin looked at him expectantly. He didn't answer. On the contrary, a strange smile appeared on his face. "Xiao Yin, you haven't seen the young master write with his left hand, right? How about I show you a little today?" "Really? Then quickly let this servant see." When Xiao Yin heard that he could write with his left hand, she was immediately filled with admiration. The young master really was a literary star who had descended to the mortal world. He was an omnipotent existence. Presumably, his left-hand writing should be extremely beautiful. Chapter 4. As the saying goes, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. After Yang Chendong put down the pen, Xiao Yin's face, which was still full of excitement, became increasingly unsightly. It was as if she had eaten something bad and had a constipated expression. It was no wonder that Xiao Yin became like this. It was just that, the words were a bit ugly. If one had to describe it, it was no different from the scribbles of a 3-year-old. Not only that, but Xiao Yin also couldn't understand what he was writing. She looked at Yang Hodong again and saw that he had a serious expression. He was really serious because he was practicing writing. He was used to using pencils since he was young. Later on, when he started writing with a fountain pen, he didn't know much about brushes. But since he was part of this society, he had to do as the Romans do. But if he were to write with his right hand, wouldn't he be showing his cowardice? It would also be unsightly. He might as well change it to his left hand. It would be logical if his writing wasn't good. Yang Chendong felt good about himself as his brush moved like a dragon. He had always admired his ability to adapt and learn. In just an hour, he felt that he could no longer recognize the words he was writing. At the very least, he could understand what they were. This in itself was a huge improvement. Xiao Yin, on the other hand, looked drowsy. Seeing these words was a kind of torture, but considering the young master's self-esteem, she resisted the urge to say anything. After another hour, who knew how much he had written on the paper, Tiger's Mane's sonorous voice came from outside the door. Young Master Fu is here." Shaking his sore arm, Yang Chendong chuckled as if he was very satisfied with his work. He nodded lightly and said to Xiao Yin, who was trying her best to stay awake, "Arrange what you've written in order." The Yang family mansion had a side hall used to receive guests. At this time, a pot-bellied man was sitting there. He was wearing a silk robe, showing that he wasn't lacking in money. Cousin Fu. Yang Chendong, who had already washed his hands, entered the hall in an ordinary green robe. Before he arrived, his voice could be heard. Looking at the fat young master, he didn't even move his buttocks. Only when Yang Chendong walked in did he raise his chin and greet him. "Sixth young master, why did you call me your cousin to come here?" Yang Fu, Yang Rong's younger brother's child. Just like his name, he had never liked the 4 books and 5 classics since he was young. Thus, he chose the path of business that was looked down upon by others. Here we need to talk about the different classes of soldiers, farmers, workers, and merchants. At that time, the status of merchants in society was extremely low, and many so-called gentlemen did not like them. But just like clothes, whether they fit or not, it was all up to the wearer to feel for themselves, and not up to others to decide what to wear. At least, Jianghu was very satisfied with his current life. He managed a Yang's grain store, a Yang's department store, and a Four Seas restaurant. He didn't earn a lot of money every day, but at least he didn't lack money to spend. He had truly reached the pinnacle of what people of later generations wanted. He could sleep until he woke up naturally and count money until his hands cramped. Of course, Jianghu being able to do all this also proved that he was a person with good eyesight. He knew that no matter which dynasty or society it was, if a rich person didn't have a background to support them, then money was just a matter of time, like the moon in the water, and could be lost at any time. Thus, when he heard butler Yang Hai say that the sixth young master was looking for him, he hurried over. In the words of later generations, this was called emotional investment. Once Yang Qindong really became rich and even became the top scholar, then he would have a backer and wouldn't have to worry about anything. But that was a matter for the future. At least for now, he didn't really care about this sixth cousin of his. Being able to invite him over was already giving him a lot of face. This was the second time that Yang Qindong saw Jianghu after coming here. The first time he had a vague impression of him was when his mother passed away. At that time, many of his brothers and sisters in the capital had rushed back, and Jianghu had appeared to flatter them. But at that time he had just arrived and his body was still weak, so he didn't have a deep impression of him. Now that he was in close contact with this cousin of his, who weighed close to 200 jin and was less than 1.7 meters tall, he had a deeper understanding of him. Walking over to the seat opposite of Yang Qindong clasped his hands with a smile and then slowly said, "Cousin Fu, everyone outside says that you are good at making money, and that you are very capable. You really make your younger brother envious." Everyone liked to hear good words, and Jianghu was naturally no exception. Especially when he was praised by a scholar like this, he was beaming with joy. Sixth cousin is too polite. Brother also has no other choice. Whenever I study I feel sleepy, so I can only do what I can. Earning a lot of money without any effort, this is only what you can do, then what about other people? Cousin Fu, you don't have to be so humble. Yang Qindong continued to flatter, scratching at the itch of the other party. In the past, I heard that scholars are rotten, and can't stand others being better than them. But after hearing sixth cousin's words today, I know that these are just the words of a lowly person. Jianghu, who was being flattered, was in a good mood. He immediately categorized the scholars, and even placed Yang Qindong in the best category. But after saying this, his tone suddenly changed. "Sixth cousin, we were relatives before, so if there is anything you want to say, just say it. Are you short on money and need money? No problem, just say a number and I will send someone to get it." If he was polite to someone, he must have a request. Yang Qindong said so many good words to flatter himself. How could Jianghu not see that the other party had something to ask of him? Could it be that he was short on money? That's right, how could someone like him, who was only cooped up at home reading books, understand the hardships of the world? It must be that his aunt had passed away, and the family's finances were tight, so there wasn't enough money. It didn't matter, he was going to invest anyway. As long as he didn't need much money, what harm was there in taking out some? At this moment, Jianghu was already prepared to spend some money, and was waiting for Yang Qindong to speak. But Yang Qindong didn't say anything. Instead, he waved his hand behind him and Xiaoyin walked over with a stack of manuscripts. "Cousin Fu, these are some of cousin's recent works. Please help me appraise them and see if they are to brother's liking." Unexpectedly, he didn't want money. For a moment, Jianghu was at a loss. But since the other party said that he wanted to appraise it himself, then he just gave it a quick glance and then casually praised it. Thinking this, he took the manuscripts. His first impression was that the handwriting was too poor. It wasn't even as good as his own. In any case, he had studied for a few years when he was young. Curious as to who wrote such unsightly handwriting, Jianghu raised his head and looked at Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong lightly nodded, indicating that he should continue reading. Jianghu was also curious as to what kind of good things could be written with such handwriting, so he lowered his head and looked at the first page. With one look, he was unable to extricate himself. The handwriting was truly ugly. There was no need to doubt it. But it had to be said that the content was truly wonderful. After just reading 2 pages, Jianghu had a feeling that he couldn't stop. Especially since there was basically no one who knew anything about it, and everything was written in plain language, so even an ignorant and incompetent person like him could understand it clearly. Chapter 5. Page after page he continued to read. Sometimes he would frown, sometimes he would jump for joy, and sometimes he would slap his thigh to express his excitement. What a joke. Yang Qindong's novel was the representative work of Jin Yong's famous martial arts novel in the future. It was also Jin Yong's work that had the most readers. Its publication established Jin Yong's status as the king of martial arts. It was The Legend of the Condor Heroes. Guijing, Huang Rong, Southern Emperor, Northern Beggar, Eastern Heretic, Western Poison, Central Divinity, and many other characters were interspersed in the novel. The novel described Guijing's life from a weak to a strong one. He was determined to fight for the country and its people, resisting the Mongol army's invasion of the southern Song dynasty. He represented the moral integrity of the nation. Of course he couldn't write so fast in the beginning. Even so, Yang Fu was immersed in it and couldn't extricate himself. He only finished the last page when the sky was about to turn dark. Then he raised his head and stared at Yang Qindong with reddened eyes. Since he was young, this was the first time Yang Fu took the initiative to read a book. He didn't expect to spend more than 2 hours reading it. Of course, this was because Yang Qindong's handwriting was too ugly. It was impossible to read quickly even if he wanted to. Looking at the pair of slightly red eyes, Yang Qindong naturally shrugged his shoulders. That's all I've written. If Cousin Fu still wants to read, you can continue. Hurry up and write. Yang Fu couldn't understand how Yang Qindong could write such a wonderful story. He only knew that he wanted to continue reading and see how the silly Guijing would develop. One cannot live without grains, so one should eat something before writing. Cousin Fu, you're too much. You must be tired after reading for an entire afternoon, so you might as well try my cook's cooking. Yang Qindong had a smile on his face. Then he threw a glance at Xiao Yin, who was standing to the side. At this moment, Xiao Yin was full of admiration for her young master. She even thought that the reason why the young master had insisted on writing with his left hand was probably because he didn't want others to know that it was his handwriting. After all, reading books and commenting on the world's affairs was the way of a scholar. Writing stories was just an unorthodox way and would be looked down upon by others. Yang Qindong didn't know that he only changed it to his left hand because he didn't want to make a fool of himself, but it would give Xiao Yin so many ideas. Seeing that Yang Fu was so optimistic about The Legend of the Condor Heroes, he knew that his plan had succeeded. After Xiao Yin left, she quickly returned with the kitchen maid Yi Qiu'er. They each carried 2 plates, 2 meat dishes and 2 vegetables dishes, and placed them on the table Tiger's mane had brought over. The dish was so ordinary that Yang Fu only glanced at it. He had the Four Seas restaurant under him, and the chefs there were obviously better than the average kitchen maid. In his heart, he was more concerned about letting Yang Qindong continue to write the story after he finished eating. However, when the 4 dishes were placed on the table, a wonderful aroma quickly wafted out and entered Yang Fu's nose. He couldn't help but twitch slightly, and then he couldn't help but say, "Why does this dish have such a fragrance?" Then, without caring about etiquette, he picked up a pair of bamboo chopsticks and reached for a plate of braised pork that looked and smelled delicious. It was really rich in flavor, and the fragrance of the sauce spread everywhere. It was fat but not greasy and lean but not dry. It was a dish that one would never get tired of eating, and was suitable for both young and old. Speaking of braised pork, Yang Fu didn't know how many times he had eaten it, but he had never tasted it as delicious as it was today. He couldn't stop himself from taking one bite after another, as if he wouldn't stop until he finished it. "Cousin Fu, don't be in such a hurry. Try something else. How about this cabbage tofu soup?" Yang Qindong noticed that Xiao Yin and Tiger's mane were staring at Yang Fu with their eyes wide open, and he knew that their cravings had been aroused. He chuckled and nodded at the kitchen maid Yi Qiu'er. Yi Qiu'er was also a clever person. She could tell that the young master wanted to make another serving for each of them, because the 4 dishes in front of them probably wouldn't be enough for Yang Fu alone. She nodded lightly and left. In just half a day, Yi Qiu'er's impression of Yang Qindong had changed greatly. She also knew that it was all because of the MSG and meat tenderizing powder. It was a pity that only the 6th young master had these things. If she didn't have the young master's support, she would return to how she was in the past. Now that she had been recognized, she definitely didn't want to return to how she was in the past. As such, there was only one thing she could do, and that was to stay close to the 6th young master. Yang Fu didn't care about these things. He tasted the cabbage tofu soup, and this ordinary soup gave him a different feeling. He continued to eat spoonful after spoonful, and in the end he almost lifted the bowl of soup and poured it into his mouth. He ate in big bites, praising the dishes endlessly until his neck was round and bulging. He could not hold on any longer. Only then did he sit down in front of the chair, feeling somewhat unsatisfied. At least 1/3 of the 4 dishes were left, and he sighed helplessly. Looking at his eyes, it was obvious that he wanted to take it away. Although there was no such thing as taking it away at that time, the meaning was similar. "How is it? Cousin Fu, are the dishes delicious?" Yang Qindong's voice sounded at the right time. "Delicious, delicious," Yang Fu couldn't help but say. At the same time, his eyes were spinning rapidly, and it was obvious that he had already started to think of his own ideas. Without waiting for Yang Fu to prepare his words, Yang Qindong took the initiative to say, "Then tell me, if such scattered dishes enter the Four Seas Tavern, it should be popular. At that time we can get a few storytellers and take turns to tell the story of the legend of the Condor heroes. Tell me, do you think there will be no customers? At that time, even if the price is higher than other restaurants, it will be overcrowded, and it will be difficult to get a seat." Of course, of course." Yang Fu nodded mechanically, but he quickly came back to his senses. "What? Sixth cousin, you mean to cooperate with me?" Seeing that Yang Fu was not stupid, Yang Qindong chuckled and nodded. There were many things that he needed to do, and this was only one thing that others thought was amazing. He couldn't spend his limited time on such things, and it was necessary to find a partner. If he wanted to do something, he couldn't lack money. Yang Fu's originally fat and unwilling appearance changed, and he sat up straight in an unbelievable manner, and quickly approached Yang Qindong. Because his movement was too fast, Tiger's mane, who was standing at the side, became vigilant. Out of habit, he actually wanted to attack. Others didn't feel it, but Yang Qindong naturally noticed it. He casually waved his hand, just enough for Tiger's mane to see. While stopping him from attacking, he smiled at Yang Fu's approaching body. This cousin of his was just a little excited, and he definitely wouldn't attack him. Nearly a month of recovery and training wasn't just for show. He didn't dare to say more, as 2 or 3 big men wouldn't be able to get close to him. "Sixth cousin, I'm willing to cooperate with you, and I'm willing to give you 70%, no. I'll give you 80%. At this moment, Yang Fu was obviously a little excited, and when he spoke, his words were a little inconsistent. Chapter 6. He was really willing to pay such a high price. Yang Fu had already seen the power of this unique dish and the legend of the Condor heroes. His Four Seas restaurant was just a pitiful business. If it wasn't for the Yang family's name, which allowed him to enjoy all kinds of benefits and reduce expenses in many aspects, he was afraid that it would have collapsed long ago. Now that there was suddenly a big hope in front of him, he wasn't a fool. He would try his best to grasp it. Yang Qindong wasn't surprised that Yang Fu was so excited. Because if he was Yang Fu, he would also seize such an opportunity. "Okay, let's cooperate. 70-30 will do. But you have to pay me 1,000 taels of silver first. I have a use for it." Yang Qindong didn't ask for too much. He didn't take advantage of the situation to fight for his own benefits and set the price at 70%. This was also something he wanted to give to Yang Fu. In his memory, Yang Fu had given him money before. Although it was a kind of investment in advance, it at least proved that Yang Fu was good to him. Of course, he wouldn't let someone who was good to him suffer a loss. "Okay then, thank you, sixth cousin," Yang Fu said sincerely. He knew very well in his heart that this so-called 10% more would be a lot of money. After that, Yang Fu took the early manuscript of the legend of the Condor heroes and swore that he would never reveal it to anyone. He took away a portion of the monosodium glutamate, grain wine, tender meat powder, pine nut powder and other things. These things should be enough for the Four Seas restaurant to use for a month. But after a month, if he wanted to continue operating, he would have to come to the door. Yang Qindong wasn't afraid that Yang Fu would cheat him. As for whether Yang Fu would play any tricks on the restaurant's account book, Yang Qindong didn't care. If Yang Fu really did that with the money, wouldn't he be able to open the restaurant himself? Not long after Yang Fu left, someone sent 1,000 taels of silver. With this, Yang Qindong had the capital to continue doing what he wanted to do. He took out 500 taels of silver and gave it to the old butler, Yang Hai. "Uncle Hai, prepare to set up a book printing factory. I have books to publish." At that time, those who could publish books would definitely be great masters. That was something that could only be done with great ability. Otherwise, if he published a book privately and no one bought it, wouldn't he be smashing his own reputation? When Yang Hai heard that the sixth young master was going to publish a book, he was naturally extremely excited. However, at the same time he was also a little worried. "The sixth young master, I think you should first find someone to collaborate with to publish a book. You should also publish fewer books." What if? Yang Qindong did not continue, but Yang Qindong already understood what he meant. Alright, let's do as Uncle Hai says. Let's contact them first. Thinking that he hadn't finished writing his book yet, it was indeed a little too hasty to think about this now. Yang Chendong naturally didn't have to worry that no one would read the books he wrote. In this era there was really too little spiritual food. Most of the books were the 4 books and 5 classics, or collections of historical classics. Even if it was a story about someone or something, only those who knew about it would be able to read it. He even mischievously thought that the reason why he chose to read it in such a way was that it was easy for people to fall asleep if he didn't read it in such a way. There were few miscellaneous books. Once The Legend of the Condor Heroes was published, it would definitely cause a sensation. It was just like when the TV was introduced into tens of thousands of households during the reform and opening up. Any TV series would be highly sought after by many people. At this time, there was no need to worry about the sales of such a book. He was confident about the prospects, but in the end there was still too little money. 500 taels was not enough to open a printing company. At that time, copper movable type printing was just popular. The cost of printing a book was really not low. If he wanted to recoup the cost, the price would naturally not be low. Naturally, the price was not something that ordinary people could accept. Take your time. Seeing Yang Hai leave, Yang Chendong put this matter aside. Then he asked Tiger's Mane to find Wu Gang, the leader of the blacksmiths at home. He was preparing to make crossbows. In this era, people could be killed easily without any crime. Having money without strength was equivalent to a treasury that could be used at will. Knowing the importance of armed forces, Yang Chendong wanted to improve his ability to protect himself. Of course, there were too many usable weapons in the warehouse, all of which were brand new. There was a small military dagger, a pistol, and a Type 97 military compass. There were also various types of howitzers, cannons, rocket launchers, and several types of advanced tanks. There were even a few helicopters. However, these were not things that should be taken out now. Although Yang Chendong had experienced many trials of war, in order to complete the task he did not know how many people died in his hands. But he was still a pacifist in his bones. Unless it was necessary, he did not like to kill people, especially Han people. Of course, the small Japanese empire was not a human in his eyes. In the end, Yang Chendong was an absolute nationalist. Except for Han people, other people's lives were naturally worthless. If he could, he would not go against the Ming dynasty government. But the idea was completely different, so the conflict seemed to be inevitable. But no matter what, he couldn't let his guard down. If he wanted to do something, safety was the most important thing. He also had to take necessary precautions. Otherwise, if someone were to sneak up on him one day and kill him and his loved ones, he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to transmigrate again. Blacksmith Wu Gang quickly came to the backyard and excitedly saw Yang Chendong. Everyone knew that Li Xuanfu was a craftsman. Suddenly, his treatment was improved and he was valued, which was the envy and expectation of all the craftsmen. Now that the young master finally met him, Wu Gang also dreamed of becoming such a person. Master Wu, I don't need to say anything more. The young master is fair in his rewards and punishments. As long as you have the ability, I will give you a platform. But if you are mediocre, I can only say sorry. Yang Chendong didn't talk much nonsense. He knew that if he didn't shock the other party in advance, he was afraid that there would be problems in management in the future. He didn't want to involve too much energy because of these small things. Young master, don't worry, I understand. Wu Gang was reasonable. He directly removed the word 6 to express his attitude. Very good. These are some things I need. You go prepare them tonight and come to me tomorrow morning. We will do something together. Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Wu Gang's attitude and handed over a stack of papers with various materials. Young master, don't worry, I will not disappoint your expectations. Wu Gang stretched out his hands and took it. Then he turned around and left as if he was swearing an oath. He did not make any excuses, which made Yang Chendong have a good impression of him. Not bad. Where is the tiger's mane? Dinner is over. How about we run 10 kilometers? Yang Chendong, who had recovered most of his body, laughed heartily. Are we going to the Yang village? Tiger's Mane heard the shout and came from the side. He asked excitedly. The distance between the Yang family mansion and the Yang village outside the city was more than 20 kilometers. Tiger's Mane knew this, but he still said this because 2 days ago, when he followed the young master to inspect the Yang village, he fell in love with a girl. She was also a tenant farmer's child, Wang Feng. She had 2 older brothers. Although she was poor, she kept her house clean. Even if she wore patched clothes, she looked so unique and did not give people a sense of inferiority. Tiger's Mane was 1 year older than Yang Chendong. He was already 16 years old. He fell in love with her and wanted to go to the Yang village outside the city every day. Hee, we won't go today. The city gate will be closed soon. It is too troublesome to go in and out. Another day we will run in the backyard. Yang Qindong shook his head and did not point out the other party's thoughts. After that he turned around and ran away. The two teenagers began their after-meal exercise, panting. But it had to be said that this kind of life was what Yang Qindong hoped for. He wanted to do what he liked and live the life he wanted. The next morning Wu Gang came to the backyard with the three important parts: the arm, the bow and the trigger. Yang Qindong just ran for 5 kilometers and had breakfast. He saw the required crossbow and crossbow on the table. The structure of the crossbow could be divided into 3 parts: the arm, the bow and the trigger. The arm was generally made of wood. The bow was across the front of the arm. The trigger was installed at the back of the arm. The most important part of the crossbow was the trigger. The trigger was generally made of copper and was installed in the gua box of the crossbow. In front of the gua hook was used to hang the string, and behind the gua was connected with the Wang Shan crosshairs for aiming. Since the beginning of the Western Han dynasty, the Wang Shan of the crossbow was engraved with a scale, which was equivalent to the gauge on modern firearms. It was easy to adjust the shooting angle according to the distance of the target and improve the shooting accuracy. Under the copper gua there was a xian dao trigger, which was used to shoot the arrow. The crossbow was not a new thing. In the Warring States period there were ballistas. In the Han dynasty, there were big yellow crossbows and zhuge repeating crossbows. In the northern Song dynasty, Shenzong invented the 3-bowed ballista and the god-arm ballista. They had a long shooting range and a high accuracy. But their shortcomings were very obvious. They were too cumbersome. What Yang Qindong wanted to make was a small steel crossbow. As a former member of the Wolf Fang, he not only needed to be proficient in firearms and weapons, but also in simple cold weapons. When doing missions, it was not always possible to have a weapon with you. You would always have enough bullets. In contrast, this small crossbow was one of the first choices. It could be shot invisibly and could not be found by advanced detectors. The parts on the table were obviously too big to meet Yang Qindong's requirements. After a few glances, he shook his head and took out the military crossbows, steel crossbows and military crossbows that he had taken out from the warehouse. Then, with a nimble movement of his fingers, a steel-tipped arrow was ready to be shot out. Whoosh! Without any warning, the arrow was shot out and hit the target 40 steps away. The ancients took 1 step each on their left and right feet, which was about 2 meters. It hit the small tree 80 meters away. Under the powerful penetrating force, it directly pierced through the tree. This kind of power caused Xiao Yin and Tiger's Mane, who were standing to the side, to be endlessly shocked. Wu Gang ran all the way to the small tree and stood in place with his eyes wide open. He was obviously shocked. Chapter 7. It was hard to imagine that such a small crossbow could have such great power. Alright, just make it according to this model of mine. Remember, you can't spread it to others. Xiao Yin, give Wu Gang 200 taels of silver. Yang Qindong knew that knowledge was power. If the method of making this crossbow was leaked, he didn't know what kind of carnage it would cause. Plop. Wu Gang knelt on the ground. Young master, please find me a remote place in the backyard. I'm willing to take 2 of my apprentices to make it together. Without orders, I won't take a step out of the backyard. Wu Gang was obviously a smart person. He knew that treasuring a jade ring would arouse the envy of others. He was just a blacksmith and didn't want to die. Approved. Xiao Yin, go arrange it. You and Yi Qiuer will be in charge of the food and drinks for the time being. Yang Qindong patted his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He suddenly felt that there were too few people he could use. Even keeping a secret could only be done by the maidservants around him. This made him feel the importance of talents. Xiao Yin took Wu Gang to find a suitable room. Yang Qindong called Tiger's Mane over. Young master, I'll give you a task. Go outside and find someone suitable. Remember, there are 3 requirements. First, they can't have any concerns. Second, they have to be capable and have practiced martial arts. Last, they can't be evil people. Moral character is very important. After he finished speaking, he gave the remaining 300 taels to Tiger's Mane. If he wanted to recruit talents, he couldn't be afraid of spending money. Tiger's Mane felt the young master's trust. He immediately knelt on one knee and said, Young master, please rest assured. I'll definitely bring back some talents. I'll go and return as soon as possible. Young master, please take care of your body while I'm away. You know the young master's ability. Even you can't say that you can win, let alone others. Go ahead. Yang Chendong chuckled. He was still growing and his strength had yet to fully recover. Tiger's man was already struggling to deal with him. Once he recovered his strength, it would be even more difficult for anyone to get close to him. After Tiger's mane left, Yang Chendong spent all of his 1,000 taels of silver. Knowing full well that money was no match for a hero, he turned around and disappeared. When he reappeared, he had a cardboard package in his hand. On it was written military supplies, mirror. That's right, this was the plastic surgery mirror used by the military. It was used to organize the military and was a must-have item for companies and above. These mirrors had just been sent over by a local manufacturer. They didn't even have time to say the words plastic surgery mirror. He tore off all the packaging and threw it back into the warehouse. The bright mirror was placed in the side hall. At this time, Xiao Yin, who had just finished arranging things for Wu Gang, walked in. When she saw the bright and clean mirror, which could even reflect the pores on the body so clearly, she cried out in alarm. Xiao Yin heard the clear reflection of the mirror. She had never seen such a clear mirror in her 16 years of life. Back then, most people used bronze mirrors. Not only did they have to be wiped clean, but they also had to be polished frequently to maintain the brightness and reflect the image. Xiao Yin's cry attracted the attention of the old housekeeper, Yang Hai. When he saw the clear mirror, his legs trembled. If he didn't have enough willpower, he might have fallen to the ground. Uncle Hai, please send someone to invite Cousin Fu over. Yang Chendong put his money on Yang Fulai again. This time Yang Fulai's speed was much faster. His fat body was still gasping for breath. Originally he wanted to ask why he was summoned, but when he saw the mirror in the side hall, he immediately stopped talking. His whole body was frozen in place as if he was scared silly. Yang Chendong didn't look at him. He continued to write like rain. He had just started shooting condors. There was still a lot to write. Fortunately, he had read it for a long time before he went to bed last night. With his super strong memory he could copy it perfectly. He didn't know how long he stood there. Maybe it was a quarter of an hour or maybe it was an hour. When his legs couldn't support his body anymore, he sat on the ground with a plop. At this moment Yang Fu finally recovered. When he saw Yang Chendong's inquiring gaze, he couldn't help but be very excited. Sixth cousin, where did you get this treasure? A missionary named John. He gave it to my cousin. He also likes this book. I told him this story. This is my reward. Yang Chendong had already thought of the origin of the mirror. When he said this, his face didn't even blush. So that's how it is. Yang Fu chose to believe him. He had also seen the beginning of the book and was really attracted to it. If he was like this, others wouldn't be any better. Not bothering with this question, Yang Chendong directly asked, Cousin Fu, do you think this mirror is valuable? It's valuable, it's valuable. Sixth cousin isn't going to sell it, right? Yang Fu's reaction was very fast. He immediately changed his tone to an excited one. That's right. Name a price. Yang Chendong nodded. He didn't know that when he did this, Xiao Yin's hands were already clenched into a ball. Of course, she wanted to leave such a good thing for the young master. However, she also knew that the young master was in need of money. As his personal maid, she felt sad that she was useless. But this is a good thing. It's enough to be a family heirloom. When Yang Fu heard that Yang Chendong was really going to sell it, he naturally felt that it was inconceivable. However, when he saw Yang Chendong's expression, he knew that the other party had already made a decision. He gritted his teeth and said, All right, if sixth cousin really wants to sell it, then I'll give you 1,000 taels. Of course, I know that this isn't a lot. However, I'm not buying it. I'm keeping it for you. When you have the money, I'll take it back. Naturally, Yang Fu had good intentions. Perhaps in his eyes, such a good treasure was extremely rare and should be kept as a family heirloom. Thus he decided to pawn it. There's no need. I advise Cousin Fu not to keep it. That John said that when he comes to the great Ming dynasty in the future, he'll bring more back. Therefore, there may be a lot of such things in the future. Yang Chendong didn't expect that a mirror could be sold for 1,000 taels. Of course, this was also because things were rare. Once such things were sold all over the streets, they wouldn't be worth much. But who told it to not be an item of this era? When he heard that there would be more, Yang Fu's expression changed. All right, if that's the case, the price of this item will be even higher. I'll pay you 1,000 taels first. When it's sold, we'll calculate it together. The previous price of 1,000 taels was only the price for pawning it. If it was sold, it would naturally be worth more. It must be said that Yang Fu still had some business ethics. All right. Yang Chendong nodded. He wasn't very concerned about how much it could be sold for. He was just short of money and couldn't spend it. Once the toilet bowl was made and the Four Seas restaurant's share of the profits came, he naturally wouldn't be short of money. Yang Fu left 1,000 taels of silver and then led people to carefully carry the mirror away. What was worth mentioning was that this item caused an uproar as soon as it appeared on the streets. None of the commoners who saw this item were shocked. Some even knelt down on the ground and shouted that it was the manifestation of an immortal. This matter quickly spread all over the place. There was no need to advertise the mirror, but the benefits of the mirror were extremely popular. In the end, it was the magistrate of Jianghu who took the lead and bought this item with 3,000 taels of silver. He then presented this auspicious item to Ming in the capital. Not to mention how much of a shock this mirror caused. In Jianghu Prefecture alone, the Four Seas Tavern suddenly became popular. Delicious dishes that couldn't be described, and the story of the legend of the Condor heroes was so moving that one couldn't extricate oneself from it. Under this double attack of spirit and appetite, it quickly became famous in Jianghu Prefecture. Every day when it was close to mealtime, all the seats were filled with people. Some came for the food while others came for the condor shooting. The originally bleak business suddenly became lively. Yang Fu was so happy that he raised the price again and again. However, this still couldn't stop the customers from coming. He really counted the money until his hands got cramps. The Four Seas restaurant became famous and made money. Following that, the name of Yang Chendong also became known. In particular, every time before the storyteller talked about the condor shooting, he would routinely introduce that this book was written by the sixth son of Yang Rongyang's cabinet, Yang Jitong, courtesy named Chendong. This made his name even more famous in Jianghu Prefecture. This was a part of Yang Chendong's plan. In ancient times, fame was very important when doing things. With fame, it would be much easier to do some things. For example, many students who were famous for their filial piety could even become officials without going through the imperial examination. In this society with an official position, it would be much more convenient to do a lot of things. Good news came one after another. Li Xuanfu didn't disappoint. The first toilet bowl was successfully made. After it was installed in Yang Chendong's backyard, the sixth young master nodded in satisfaction and began to promote it vigorously. For a time, all the officials and rich people in Jianghu Prefecture began to install it. The cost of each toilet bowl was 100 taels of silver. The cost was only 10 taels of silver. This alone brought in a lot of profit. With the toilet bowl making money, the Four Seas restaurant could be described as making a lot of money every day. Yang Chendong naturally became famous, but trouble also came along with it. On this day the old housekeeper, Yang Hai, came to the backyard and told the sixth young master that there had been strangers loitering outside the residence for the past 2 days. After hearing this, Yang Chendong didn't have any strange expression. He still had a smile on his face as he raised his head and said, "Uncle Hai, it's already September. Take the people in the residence to Yang village and see if there's anything we can help with. It's still early for the harvest. There's still more than a month." Yang Hai said with some confusion, but then he thought of something. His expression changed and he said, "Sixth young master, you're not going to stay, are you?" "Yes, I'm going to stay. Since there are people spying on this place, we can't guard against them day and night. We have to give them a chance to show off." Yang Chendong still had a smile on his face, but no matter how one looked at it, there seemed to be a trace of killing intent in his smile. Chapter 8. Yang Hai wanted to object, but when he saw the determination in Yang Chendong's eyes, he finally obeyed the decision. Originally, he had wanted to keep some of the younger generation in the old house, but they were all rejected one by one. According to the sixth young master, they were just petty thieves. There was no need to mention them. He alone was enough to deal with them. But the so-called alone was broken in the end. The maid, Qiao Yin, threatened Yang Chendong with her life, and Yang Chendong was defeated. In the end, except for the old gatekeeper, only Yang Chendong, Qiao Yin, Wu Gang, and his 2 apprentices were left in the mansion. These 3 could not leave. They had to stay in the backyard to prevent the secret from being leaked. In order to lure the bandits out, the Yang clan had made a lot of noise this time. Not everyone in the city knew about it, but when the large group of people left the city and headed towards the Yang clan manor, it still attracted a lot of discussion. Among the crowd, there were 2 thieves, who were eyeing the Yang family's property. Compared to the others, these 2 people's faces were obviously darker. The number of wrinkles on their faces also exceeded their age. If an experienced person was here, they would be able to tell at a glance that this was caused by years of exposure to the sea breeze. That's right, these two people were pirates. They were originally active in the coastal area of Fuzhou. Because Fuzhou was connected to Jianghu, they inadvertently heard about Yang Qindong. The reason why rumors were called rumors was because the facts were exaggerated. Just like what the outside world said, the sixth young master of the Yang family, Yang Qindong, was a literary star. He was intelligent, thought of shortcuts, and had friends all over the world. He even saw the white-skinned man as a friend. That was how the mirror was created. It was more like the popular legend of the Condor heroes, and the clean, convenient, quick and comfortable toilet bowl were also created by this person. How could a person who could do such a thing not be simple? How could he not be rich? Since he was rich, he would naturally become a target in the eyes of the pirates. This time the two people in the crowd were just spies. They did have some ability. They actually found out that most of the people in the Yang family manor had left, but the sixth young master, Yang Qindong, stayed. This was an opportunity bestowed by the heavens. The two spies hurriedly made their way through the crowd. After making many turns, they arrived at the courtyard of Jianghu Mansion. Here they saw their leader, Gao Xiong. Just like his name, Gao Xiong looked tall and mighty. His height of more than 1.8 meters made it easy for him to stand out from the crowd. His eyes were like copper bells. Those who were slightly timid would probably be too scared to move when they met his gaze. The two spies told Gao Xiong everything they'd heard, and Gao Xiong couldn't help but nod. Very good, looks like even the heavens are helping us. Alright, let's take action tonight. Let's go meet this literati star. Yang family mansion. The front courtyard was eerily quiet. Fortunately, the back courtyard wasn't a place ordinary people could enter. Qiao Yin was already used to this kind of silence. In the past, she would fall asleep in the evening. But now, she began to close her eyes and nod. It had to be said that she was a girl with a big heart. Even though she knew something was wrong, she still did what she should do. Yang Qindong stood in front of the study with his hands behind his back. He looked at Qiao Yin, who was already conversing with Zhou Gong. The corner of his mouth curled up. Then he turned around and disappeared. In the large warehouse, Yang Qindong was looking for a suitable weapon. Since he had bad intentions, he was definitely a vicious person. If he wasn't careful, the consequences would be unthinkable. But since he dared to stay, he was naturally prepared to deal a heavy blow and deal a heavy blow. Type 92 9mm automatic pistol. Effective range of 50 meters. Muzzle velocity of 350 meters per second. Overall length of 190 millimeters. Barrel length of 111 millimeters. Weight of the gun is 760 grams. Uses 15 double-row double-entry magazines to ensure that the rate of jamming is minimized. Matched with a small hole suppressor, it can ensure that there is no sound when firing, and it won't arouse suspicion. Kevlar bulletproof vests are naturally a necessity. It is also the best method to reduce danger. He thought about whether or not he should get one for Qiao Yin, but in the end he decided against it. First, he couldn't explain the origin of these things. Second, he could ensure that the enemy wouldn't be able to get close to him. Qiao Yin, who was standing behind him, would naturally be safe. The newest infrared thermal imaging device for individual soldiers could ensure that no living person could escape the detection of the line of sight. This was to ensure that no fish in the net would escape the net. After spending some time to gather all the necessary items, Yang Qindong's figure flashed and reappeared in the study. The sky was about to turn dark. What should come will come sooner or later. The night was dark and the wind was strong. It was the time to commit murder and arson. The weather was perfect. There was no moon tonight. There was a light breeze and it was pitch black. It was the best time to commit a crime. Around 2 o'clock, Yang Qindong's ears twitched as he was writing the ending of Shoot the Condor. He suddenly stopped writing and shook his left hand. Then he looked at the handwriting that had become much nicer and nodded at Qiao Yin. Let's call it a day. You can put it away. Qiao Yin didn't know why she was writing until so late. But since she was used to listening to the young master, she unconditionally followed his instructions. When she finished, she turned around and saw the young master wearing sunglasses and a light green military uniform that she had never seen before. Shoo! Without waiting for Qiao Yin to speak, Yang Qindong had already reached out his left hand to cover her mouth and nose. Then he made a shushing gesture and moved his body closer. Are you scared? At such a close distance, she could clearly feel Yang Qindong's presence. Qiao Yin blushed and shook her head. With the young master here, Qiao Yin isn't scared. Very good. Then follow me. Remember, with the young master here, no matter what happens, you don't have to be afraid. Understand? Yang Qindong shook Qiao Yin's slender hand and gave her a confident smile. Then he opened the door to the study and placed a bamboo chair in front of the door. It was still pitch black outside. There was only darkness in sight. Yang Qindong, who sat on the bamboo chair, had already used the infrared camera to clearly see everything in the dark. A total of 10 people. He had really invested a lot. Young master. Qiao Yin, who was standing behind him, couldn't see anything, but the tense atmosphere made her unable to help but speak. Shh. Don't say anything. The young master is here for everything. Using the weak light, she could see the side of Yang Qindong's face. At that moment, it was so resolute and so determined that Qiao Yin couldn't help but be mesmerized. Friends, since you're here, please show yourself. How long are you going to hide? A voice suddenly sounded. It was so powerful that it came from Yang Qindong's mouth. The voice was especially clear in the silent night. However, when his voice traveled out, he was still met with silence. After about 5 seconds of silence, Yang Qindong, who didn't receive a reply, laughed. What? You dare to come, but you don't dare to show yourself? If that's the case, then don't blame me for inviting you out. The loud laughter was accompanied by the sound of a body falling to the ground. At a corner of the courtyard wall, a humanoid figure fell to the ground without any signs of life. Following the sound of the body falling to the ground, there were a few heavy breathing sounds. Clearly, the sudden exposure and death of their companion had frightened some people. However, no one showed themselves. Yang Qindong knew that he hadn't done enough. He simply laughed again. Haven't you taught me a lesson yet? Another figure fell to the ground with a thud. 5 meters away from the dead body, a black figure rolled to the ground and stopped moving. 2 people had died in succession. Finally, the bandits hiding in the dark couldn't hold themselves back any longer. A booming voice suddenly sounded. Enough. We're out. One after another, black figures walked out. One after another, 8 living people suddenly appeared in the dark. They appeared in the open space in front of the study's window. Under the illumination of the light, their faces were revealed one by one. At the same time, the cold blades in their hands were clearly reflected. Although they were blades, there were all kinds of them. There were Tang swords, standard military swords, and even Japanese swords. You're from the Japanese Empire? During this period of time, Yang Qindong had done quite a bit of research. Naturally, he recognized the blades as soon as he saw them. No. We stole them from the sea. The leader of the 8 people, Gao Xiong, who was also the tallest, took the initiative to stand out and answer. The scene just now had really frightened him. He didn't see them do anything. All he saw was a faint flash of light. However, before he could catch it, his brother was already dead on the ground. Gao Xiong had been at sea for many years. He had seen all kinds of hidden weapons and rare occurrences. However, it was the first time he had heard of someone being killed without a trace. From the moment he appeared until now, his face had been filled with shock. Stealing a ship from the Japanese Empire? Yes, that's what a man would do. A trace of appreciation appeared on his cold face. When he spoke, he seemed to have lost some of his coldness and had become more emotional. But before Gao Xiong and the others could relax, the cold voice sounded again. But you actually dared to have ideas about me. That's already a capital offense. What? You're the literati star that people talk about? Gao Xiong's face changed. He originally thought that Yang Qindong was an expert hired by the Yang clan to deal with him and the others. He didn't expect that he was actually the real master. When he asked this question, Gao Xiong clenched his teeth. Right now, he only wanted to chop up the 2 people who had been spying on him and feed them to the dogs. They had actually said that the Yang clan's 6th young master only knew how to study and that his body was extremely weak. This time, he didn't follow the Yang clan to the Yang clan manor because his body wasn't good and he couldn't go out. But now it seemed that this was simply bullshit. It was true that he was young, but his calmness was incomparable to them. How could they see a trace of weakness in him? Chapter 9. I'm the real deal. Yang Qindong purposely bared his teeth and admitted his identity. Then tell me, how should I punish you? Everyone attack him together. He's only one person. At such a close distance, I don't believe that he... Suddenly, someone interrupted Yang Qindong's words. Then, a man on the far left shouted and prepared to charge forward. However, before he could finish his words, he followed in the footsteps of the other 2 men and fell to the ground with a thud, no longer breathing. Was the warning from before not enough? Yang Qindong's gaze swept over them and then looked at Gao Xiong and the others one by one. Who else? If you want to die, say it. I'll immediately fulfill your wish. This time, Gao Xiong finally saw through the clues. He realized that the weapon of the person who killed his brother was actually that unremarkable and extremely small iron spear. It was not that he had never seen a gun before. In the Ming dynasty, there was a firearm battalion, also known as the Divine Arms Battalion. The soldiers there played with guns. It was said that if they hit accurately, they could take a person's life from 80 steps away. He was even lucky enough to see it once. He only remembered that the gun would produce a puff of smoke. Its movement was not small, it was not coherent, and its accuracy was even worse. It was not like this thing which was not only small, easy to hide, but also so accurate. Is this a gun? With a head full of doubts, Gao Xiong could not help but ask curiously. Yang Qindong really admired Gao Xiong's observation skills. First, he was able to judge the situation. When he saw that the situation was not good, he took the initiative to show weakness and stood out. Second, he dared to stand out, which meant that he had a certain degree of responsibility. At least he was not a coward. As for the last point of observation, it was even more extraordinary. When others did not understand what was going on and were afraid, he could see the crux of the matter. If he met such a person in the future, Yang Qindong would even think of a way to let him enter the army. With proper training he would definitely be a good seedling. Sigh, it's a pity. But when he thought of Gao Xiong's identity, Yang Qindong shook his head. These people were still pirates and enemies. As he spoke, Yang Qindong gently turned his gun and aimed at the leftmost pirate. He wanted to kill them one by name. Plop. When Gao Xiong saw Yang Qindong's actions, he decisively knelt on the ground. Sixth young master, were not bad people. We're all forced by life. These brothers were born poor because they couldn't survive in their hometown. Otherwise, who would be willing to bend their heads to become pirates who might not even have a tomorrow? It's our fault for coming here today. We were blind. Everything is our fault and we should be punished. However, I was the one who started it. If you must die, just kill me. As for the other brothers, sixth young master, please be magnanimous and leave them with their lowly lives. They're willing to work like cows or horses. After speaking these words, Gao Xiong kowtowed to the ground. Plop, plop, plop. After a few kowtows, blood flowed out from his forehead. Big brother, if we're going to die, let's die together. At most, we'll still be heroes after 18 years. When the other six brothers saw Gao Xiong, who had always been unyielding in their eyes, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing like a helpless child, they were all moved. One by one they followed suit and kowtowed to the ground. For a moment, the entire backyard was filled with the sound of people hitting the ground. Young master, they're quite pitiful. At this moment, even Xiao Yin, who had been trembling in the back, could not help but plead for mercy for these people. Didn't she not suffer any harm? Moreover, the other side had already lost 3 people. In the eyes of the kind-hearted Xiao Yin, they had already been punished and could be spared. Enough. Seeing that even Xiao Yin was speaking like this, Yang Qindong suddenly shouted. This shout was especially loud in the silent night. This shout shook Gao Xiong and the others, causing them to raise their heads and not know what to do. At the same time, this shout also shocked Xiao Yin to the spot. Then she could not stop her tears from flowing out from the corners of her eyes. She clearly thought that she had said something wrong and made the young master unhappy. Who would have thought that in the next moment, Yang Qindong would suddenly stand up from his chair and casually place his gun on the chair. Then, as if performing a magic trick, he took out a handkerchief and wiped the corners of Xiao Yin's eyes. Silly girl, what are you crying for? I'm not talking about you. You won't look good if your eyes are swollen from crying. To tell the truth, although Xiao Yin was only 15 years old, the parts that were supposed to be protruding were protruding and the parts that were supposed to be sunken were sunken. Moreover, with her sweet appearance, she was a beauty in the making. These days of getting along with each other made him understand her kindness. How could he bear to make her cry? Seeing that the young master was not angry at her, Xiao Yin immediately smiled through her tears. Young master, you don't blame Xiao Yin? Young master can't wait to dote on you. How could he blame you? Yang Qindong continued to help her wipe her tears. Only the corners of his eyes were constantly paying attention to what was happening behind him. Naturally, he did not only have one gun on him. This was a habit of his. Just now he had placed the gun there only to test the waters. Tiger's man had been out searching for a servant who practiced martial arts for a while now, but he had not received any news. This made him sigh at how hard it was to find a talent. Today, after seeing Gao Xiong's loyal side, especially the ability he had displayed, he wanted to subdue him. And this was just a test. Of course, there was a limit to this kind of test. If the other party had only wanted to beg for mercy, then now that there was an opportunity in front of them, they would definitely give it their all. If that was the case, he did not mind turning around and killing these bandits one by one. After probing, Yang Qindong was satisfied with the results. While he was comforting Qiao Yin, the 7 of them didn't do anything. Perhaps they were truly afraid of being killed by him, or perhaps they were truly loyal people. Since they were begging for mercy, they wouldn't do anything to betray others. But no matter what the result was, it proved that these people were useful. Since that was the case, Yang Qindong would naturally try to convince them to work for him. These people were pirates. And what did the pirates of 1445 represent? It was unlimited wealth and opportunity. This was the time when the Ming dynasty's government banned the sea. It was also the time when the power of the sea was at its weakest. If he could build a military force here, then not only would he be able to fool others, he could also open up a new battlefield overseas and cultivate a stronger power. At the very least, he would be able to find a way out for himself. He would not encounter any danger on land and not know where to go. Seeing that these people had no intention of acting rashly, Yang Qindong finally slowly turned around. You are facing 2 paths. One is to be killed by me, and the other is to submit to me and work for me. Make your choice. Gao Xiong, who originally thought that he was going to die, had a flash of light in his eyes. The 6th young master was actually willing to take them in as slaves. Although they might lose their freedom from the strength he had displayed, he was undoubtedly a very good leader. Even if they did not die and only lost a bit of freedom, who would not be willing to submit to such a strong person? Thump thump thump, another wave of kowtow sounded. 6th young master, we are willing to submit to you and follow you as our master. Perhaps it was a temporary measure, or perhaps they were truly convinced. But no matter what, at least they were convinced now. As for whether they would have other thoughts in the future, Yang Qindong believed that when he showed enough strength, they would only have a deeper level of fear. At that time, even if he forced them to rebel, they would not have the courage to do so. Get up. Next, we will announce the first order for you. Deal with your 3 brothers. Also, come with me to the study. Pointing at Gao Xiong, Yang Qindong turned around and left. It seemed that he was not worried that these people would escape because they were no longer under his control. Boss? Seeing that there was no restriction, the other brothers all came to Gao Xiong's side. Gao Xiong naturally knew what they meant. The feeling of being under someone's control was not good. However, he had already submitted to them. Plus, he did not know what kind of environment he was in, and whether there were still people secretly watching him. He shook his head lightly. Deal with our brothers' bodies properly. Remember to stay away. I will go in and take a look. The light in the study was much clearer than outside. When Gao Xiong came in, he saw Yang Qindong sitting behind the table. 6th young master. When he saw the jet-black iron spear on the table, Gao Xiong could not help but tremble. He hurriedly knelt on the ground. What is your name? Where is your home? What do you do for a living? Yang Qindong's voice was ordinary. He was not old, but he gave people endless pressure. My name is Gao Xiong. My ancestral home is Fuzhou. Because my family's land was invaded by bandits, my parents were forced to die. In a fit of anger, I killed them and fled to the sea. Now, I mainly make a living at sea. Usually, I rob merchant ships. However, I have never robbed civilians. My targets are the rich families. Gao Xiong's language was quite clear. In addition to his good observation skills, Gao Xiong's ability gained Yang Qindong's recognition. Making a living at the sea? Then you are a pirate? Have you ever fought with other pirates? Yes, but because my strength is limited, I only have 2 warships and 30 brothers. My strength is limited, so I don't dare to go to the deep sea. The area I can move in is limited. Gao Xiong told him everything that had happened. Since things had come to this point, there was nothing left to hide. Oh, so you still have 20 brothers outside? Yes, they are all waiting for news at the illegal docks in Fuzhou. When Gao Xiong answered this sentence, he had a little plan in mind. That was, you can't just kill me. Otherwise, who knows if my brothers will avenge me. Then you won't be able to live in peace. Chapter 10. As for where the Black Dock was, it was just a name the brothers came up with casually. It was a secret base that no one else knew except for themselves. Yang Qindong, who looked only 15 years old but was mentally over 40 years old, how could he not understand the meaning behind Gao Xiong's words? After a mocking laugh, he said, with such little prospects, what kind of profit can you make if you can only stay in the coastal waters? This little one also wants to take a look at the deep sea, but my strength is limited. Going there is just looking for death. Gao Xiong's words carried a hint of grievance. He was just a poor commoner who relied on loyalty and hard work to build up his family business. However, his foundation was too weak and his strength was limited. As the saying goes, poor people have low ambitions. Looking for death? Then if I support you and give you guns and cannons, do you have the guts to venture into the deep sea? Yang Qindong increasingly felt that Gao Xiong and the others were a force he could accept. It didn't matter if their strength was lacking. With his support, it was only a matter of time before they became stronger. Gao Xiong suddenly raised his head, his face full of disbelief. Even Xiao Yin, who was standing behind him, trembled. What was wrong with the young master? Why didn't he report to the authorities after catching the pirates? Why did he want to become friends with them? If the government found out about this, he would be beheaded. Ignoring the two's reactions, Yang Qindong continued to speak powerfully. You saw my gun just now. You know how powerful it is. Now that the opportunity is in front of you, whether or not you can seize it depends on how ambitious you are. I'm willing. How could Gao Xiong not know that this was an opportunity? He immediately kowtowed to the ground. Everyone had dreams, it was just that they weren't realistic. His dream was to dominate a region in the sea. Even if it was just a corner, he would be satisfied. Now that the opportunity was here, how could he let it go? All right, we'll leave the city at dawn. Take me to the Black Dock to take a look. Go. Yang Qindong waved his hand as if telling Gao Xiong that he could leave. Gao Xiong left with a heart full of excitement. Now that there was no one else in the study, Yang Qindong turned around and comforted Xiao Yin. Yin, you must have been frightened tonight. Although she didn't see the corpse, Xiao Yin knew that she had killed someone. She must be very scared. Young master? It was fine. But these people are outlaws, why don't you hand them over to the authorities? Just as Xiao Yin was about to say something, Yang Qindong waved his hand. He felt sorry for Xiao Yin because she felt sorry for him, but that didn't mean that his willpower would be affected. Speaking of which, he was a male chauvinist to begin with. Especially when it came to matters of life and death, he was even more determined. Just pretend that nothing happened tonight. This is the price you have to pay for staying by the young master's side. You have to learn to forget, understand? What Yang Qindong didn't say was that if she couldn't forget him, then the two of them wouldn't be fated to be together. He would find a good family for Xiao Yin to marry, and they would part ways from then on so that they wouldn't implicate each other. Yes, nothing happened tonight. Xiao Yin was smart enough to see the seriousness in Yang Qindong's eyes. She was afraid that the young master would abandon her because of her disobedience. Very good, it's late. Go to sleep. Alright, stay here tomorrow. I'll be going out for a while, but I'll be back soon. Don't worry. Yang Qindong had made up his mind to go to the illegal docks, but he couldn't bring Xiao Yin along this time. After all, it was an unfamiliar place and it was dangerous. Oh. Xiao Yin obediently replied. Tonight's events had shaken her greatly, and she needed time to digest them. She had also heard that the illegal docks were a few hundred li away in Fuzhou. A weak woman like her would only be a burden if she went that far. Young master, you must be careful. Iner is waiting for you at home. In the courtyard, Gao Xiong had already told his subordinates about the conversation he'd had with Yang Qindong. When they heard that the mysterious sixth young master was willing to support them in making a living on the sea, they were all excited. The deaths of the three brothers had been greatly diluted. Speaking of which, the three of them had only recently joined, and they weren't very obedient to Gao Xiong. They weren't like the others who wouldn't act rashly without their big brother's orders. Gao Xiong put the three brothers' corpses into the gunny sack. Originally he'd planned to loot the Yang clan, but now he'd put the corpses of his own brothers in it. After everything was done, they huddled together outside the courtyard for the night. When the sun rose the next day, a carriage covered with a shed appeared outside the Yang clan's old residence. The corpses in the gunny sack were thrown inside, and Yang Qindong drove the carriage out of Jianghu Manor. Not far behind him were Gao Xiong's group of 7 who had split up. After leaving the city, they found an unmarked graveyard and buried the 3 corpses. Then the group of 8 headed for Fuzhou. The road wasn't very good, so the carriage wasn't very fast. Gao Xiong's group of 7 could barely keep up. Just like that, 3 days later they finally arrived at Fuzhou, and another day later they arrived at the so-called Black Wharf. Black Wharf was nothing more than a deserted seaside. Because it was suitable for large ships to dock near the sea, it became the place where Gao Xiong's group rested and got its name. As soon as Yang Qindong's group appeared, several figures appeared beside the reefs by the seaside. At first they looked around vigilantly, but when they saw that Gao Xiong's group was among them, they all jumped out in joy. "Big brother, is everything going well? How much wealth does the Yang clan have?" A man wearing a tattered robe but very spirited, walked out from the crowd with an iron blade in his hand, a smile on his face. But after taking 2 steps forward, the situation suddenly changed. The iron blade in his hand suddenly flew out of his hand, and a powerful force was transmitted to his arm, causing him to fall uncontrollably to the ground. "Sixth young master, don't worry, this is my brother Yu Guang." Gao Xiong, who had already seen Yang Qindong's power, naturally knew what had happened, and hurriedly pleaded for his brother. "Tell your brothers to be careful when they speak to this young master." Yang Qindong's voice was still cold, as if he could kill at any time without blinking. "Yes, yes." Gao Xiong hurriedly nodded his head as if he was pounding garlic. Then he shouted to his brothers who had emerged from the reefs, "Don't speak, listen to the 6th young master." When these words were said, all the pirates were stunned. What was the meaning of this? Weren't they going to rob the Yang clan? How did they end up with the 6th young master? This name was very familiar. If they remembered correctly, their target this time was called the 6th young master. Ignoring everyone's puzzled expressions, Gao Xiong walked in front of Yang Qindong like a lackey. "6th young master, this is the illegal dock. Behind the reefs over there are the 2 warships that we currently have. Let's go take a look." Yang Qindong lightly nodded his head, then ignored everyone's surprised gazes and took the lead to walk behind the reefs. Everyone didn't understand why the 6th young master would appear here, but since their boss was following, they naturally wouldn't casually make a move. However, those pairs of eyes were still closely staring at Yang Qindong, as if they were ready to attack at the slightest disagreement. Yang Qindong was already used to this. With his head held high, he arrogantly walked past the reefs. What entered his eyes were 2 warships that were close to 20 feet long and 60 to 70 feet wide. Don't be fooled by the name warship, it was actually the smallest type of ship in the Ming dynasty. Not counting sentry ships and patrol ships, this type of warship was the smallest type. In the early Ming dynasty, the power of the sea was still very strong. Especially the treasure ships that Jianghu built when he went to the Western Ocean. They were huge existences, and who knew how many countries at sea were frightened by them. However, ever since the Ming Xuanzong era, the country had gradually stopped building ships because it was a waste of manpower and money. Until the current Ming Zone, they had directly banned the production of ships. Naturally, the production of ships had stopped, and some shipyards had closed down. The workers there had also been dismissed and returned home. It was because of the ban that the Japanese Empire was able to prosper in the future. Later on, Qi Jiguang fought against the Japanese on the coast. Since the treasure ships were no longer built, the next largest ship was the horse ship. The length of the horse ship was 37 feet long and 15 feet wide, and it was the second largest warship. The third was the grain ship, which was 28 feet long and 12 feet wide. The fourth was the passenger ship, which was 24 feet long and 94 feet wide. The last was the warship in front of them, which was 18 feet long and 60 feet wide. It had to be said that the frame of the Ming dynasty ship was not small, but when it was used as a ship, the things inside were not worth mentioning. In Yang Qindong's eyes, other than a few bows and arrows, he could not see any other weapons. No wonder they could only deal with merchant ships that did not have any defensive capabilities. With such simple and primitive weapons, to be able to do such a thing, there would be a lot of losses. Moreover, to deal with merchant ships, they could only choose to deal with small targets. When Gao Xiong saw this, his heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the 6th young master did not like these ships? Speaking of which, his family was too shabby. Walking back to the shore from the ship, Yang Qindong looked at the 27 people in front of him. Although their clothes could be said to be shabby, their spirits were good. Apart from their skin being a little darker, their eyes were shining and they were in good condition. This was the only thing he appreciated. Whether it was fighting a war or doing something, in the end it was done by manpower. Therefore, human factors often directly determine whether things were good or bad. Looking at the crowd, Yang Qindong said in a clear voice, "My name is Yang Jitong. My courtesy name is Qindong. People call me the 6th young master. Your boss, Gao Xiong, wanted to kill me for money, but I discovered him and killed 3 of your brothers." Chapter 11. As soon as he finished speaking, the other pirates who had already discovered that the 3 of them were missing were filled with righteous indignation. From the looks of it, it was clear that they would attack at any time. Perhaps in their eyes, the sixth young master was too young and alone. Any one of them could easily deal with him. Seeing the restlessness of the crowd, Yang Qindong laughed mischievously. Then his gaze fell on a spear more than 20 steps away. It was unknown which pirate's weapon it was, but it was currently stuck in the ground. With a wave of his hand, a shot was fired. Bang! The Type 92 without a silencer let out a gunshot. Looking at the spear, it had already broken into two. This sudden change shocked everyone. The pirates who were originally eager to rush up and capture him consciously stopped moving forward. There were even some who began to break out in cold sweat. To be able to accurately hit the spear from such a distance, then if they had rushed up, wouldn't they have become corpses by now? Seeing everyone's reaction, Yang Qindong was very satisfied. This was the effect he wanted. Very good, you should have seen the advantage of a weapon. When you still want to show off your courage and think that your strength is the best in the world, others can already take your head from 100 steps away. May I ask, how are you going to fight this battle? Facing such a question, more than 20 brothers lowered their heads, including the two leaders, Gao Xiong and Yu Guang. Seeing that everyone was shocked by his display of strength, there were even some who revealed fear and pain in their eyes. Yang Qindong knew that the effect of establishing his power had been achieved. Following the idea of showing mercy and mercy, the next step was to show mercy. You still have self-respect and can still see your own shortcomings. This is very good. At least it proves that you still have self-respect, still no shame, and can still be saved. Yang Qindong's voice suddenly became louder as he shouted, "No shame and then be brave. A person who is poor is not scary, what is scary is that he has developed a habit and does not know how to strive forward. A person who is weak is also not scary, what is scary is that he has accepted his fate and does not dare to fight anymore. Let me ask you, have you accepted your fate?" No. Everyone shouted at the same time. Even Gao Xiong, who was standing in the crowd, couldn't understand why he had been provoked by those words. He even had to answer the other party's questions. Very good. Yang Qindong didn't give them time to think and nodded with satisfaction. His gaze then fell on Gao Xiong and Yu Guang. "You two come with me." Yang Qindong strode towards the carriage, followed by Gao Xiong and Yu Guang. During this time Yu Guang asked Gao Xiong with a confused look, "Boss? What did he mean by that?" Also, isn't it said that the sixth young master of the Yang family is a literary star who has descended from the heavens, and only knows how to use the wondrous brush and blossoms technique, but his body is extremely weak? I don't know either. Shaking his head, Gao Xiong didn't know how to explain everything before him. He had thought that he was going to slaughter a little lamb that had yet to grow up. In the end, when he arrived, he discovered that it was a ferocious tiger that had just reached adulthood. That kind of contrast was as big as one could imagine. While the two were muttering behind him, Yang Qindong had already arrived at the side of the carriage, lifted the curtain and entered. When he came out, he looked at the two people who were already standing beside the carriage and said, "Go and carry out the things inside." Gao Xiong and Yu Guang instinctively agreed and also lifted the curtain to enter the carriage. Then two extremely loud screams were heard. What's going on? The other pirates heard the shouts of their brothers and quickly ran over. A few of the bolder ones were ready to pounce on Yang Qindong at any time. Although the shot just now scared them, they still had a chance of winning by relying on their numbers. Before these people could do anything, the curtain of the carriage was lifted again, and then Gao Xiong and Yu Guang jumped down with a black machine in their arms. What is this? Is it a gun or a cannon? When the pirates saw that Gao Xiong and Yu Guang were unharmed, they no longer had any killing intent. However, when they saw the things in their hands, they all widened their eyes in confusion. It was no wonder they were so surprised. Gao Xiong and Yu Guang were holding a Type 87 35mm automatic grenade launcher. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small cannon. Type 87 35mm automatic grenade launcher. Not only could it shoot in a straight line, but it could also shoot in a curved line. It was an automatic infantry weapon that could kill and break armor. It could suppress enemy fire points within 800 meters and kill exposed and hidden living targets within 1,750 meters. It weighed 40 Jin and had a killing radius of 10 meters. It was nicknamed the mini infantry cannon. It had 15 rounds of ammunition and the trigger was on the side. This was naturally the weapon that Yang Qindong took out from the large warehouse after inspecting the warship. Since he wanted to subdue this group of pirates, he needed to pay a price first. Otherwise, how could he dominate the sea? Gao Xiong and Yu Guang, who were smiling, did not know the name of this weapon, nor did they know how to use it. However, looking at this black thing, they naturally felt a sense of joy. In their opinion, this thing must be very useful. Put it on the ground. Yang Qindong wanted to intimidate everyone. He pointed at the mini infantry cannon in Yu Guang's hands. Yu Guang answered mechanically and carefully placed Little Pao on the ground like a bride. He was afraid that he would hurt Little Pao. All of you move aside. Looking at the crowd, Yang Qindong waved his hand. Very quickly the scene was cleared. Everyone's gaze fell on Yang Qindong. They wanted to see what he would do next. What would happen next? Without looking at the crowd, Yang Qindong casually glanced at the reef in the distance. He saw a huge rock standing among the rocks. He pointed and asked, "Do you see that slightly bigger rock?" Everyone followed his finger and immediately nodded. Yu Guang even took the initiative to answer, "I see it. That rock is about 700 steps away and weighs about 100 jin." Hearing Yu Guang's answer, Yang Qindong's face was filled with joy. He didn't expect Yu Guang's eyesight to be so extraordinary. He really was a good seedling. Seeing the admiration in Yang Qindong's eyes, Yu Guang naturally puffed out his chest. It was as if he was saying, "How is it? Aren't you amazing?" However, this pride disappeared with Yang Qindong's next sentence. "Then I'll choose that rock. Everyone watch closely. How do I destroy it in an instant?" "What? That's impossible." "It's definitely impossible. It's 700 steps away and it's so big. This reef is very sturdy after being hit by the wind and rain. I think he's just boasting." Voices of discussion rose and fell one after another. Clearly, to the people who did not have the slightest bit of experience, the goal that Yang Qindong mentioned was simply impossible to achieve. Everyone quiet down. Yang Qindong didn't care so much. Instead, he laid down beside the mini cannon. His left eye was closed and his right eye was wide open as he started to aim. Everyone didn't know what would happen next, but they instinctively became extremely quiet. They stared at Yang Qindong's body, waiting to see what would happen next. Yang Qindong didn't make them wait for long. He didn't make any extra movements. His right index finger pulled the trigger on the side of the mini cannon. Following that, a flame suddenly shot out. When the flame flashed, many people were shocked. Before they could react, a loud boom was heard. Following that, someone shouted in their ears, "It hit! It hit!" It was indeed hit. Not only that, but the 50-kilogram rock that was 700 steps away had already turned into powder. There was no trace of it. Silence. Apart from the sound of the waves crashing against the reef and the heavy breathing of the crowd, there was no other movement. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. They were so shocked that their jaws almost fell to the ground. Among these people, there were a few former naval soldiers of the Great Ming Dynasty. They were fortunate enough to have seen the cannons of the Great Ming Dynasty. However, not only were those cannons huge, but they were also loaded from the muzzle. There was no rifling in the barrel. The cannons didn't have or only had very simple aiming and recoil devices. When firing, they often needed to be manually ignited. The cannons only had solid shells made of stone or iron. Occasionally, there would be a small number of explosive bombs as well as scattershot made of stone, metal, or lead. It was almost impossible for such a cannon to accurately hit an object 700 steps away. Even if it was a coincidence, it wouldn't be able to turn the rock into powder like this. If there was a comparison, it would be like the difference between heaven and earth. Just imagine if such a cannon met the cannons of the Great Ming Dynasty, what would happen? Even a fool would be able to tell. It would probably be completely destroyed before the enemy could even get close. Even if the enemy managed to get close, it would be very difficult for it to cause any fatal damage. With a single cannon, everyone became silent. After a quarter of an hour, a putong sound was heard. It was the sound of Gao Xiong, who was hugging another mini cannon, kneeling on the ground. It had to be said that even though Gao Xiong was kneeling on the ground, he was still holding the mini cannon in his arms. From this, it could be seen that Gao Xiong was a person with great strength. Following Gao Xiong's kneeling, the others also came to their senses and followed suit, kneeling down with a series of thuds. At this moment they truly submitted. Whether it was because of the power of the cannons or because they were intimidated by Yang Qindong's imposing manner, they had now lost the power to resist. All that was left was their willingness to submit. "Sixth young master, we are willing to be your slaves. We only ask that you accept us." Gao Xiong was the leader of the group, so his words naturally represented everyone. Chapter 12. What was different from before was that after he said this, no one objected. It was clear that they had tacitly agreed to this fact. To put it nicely, they were pirates. However, in reality they were not doing well. Otherwise, they would not have thought of going to Jianghu Prefecture, which was hundreds of miles away. Now that they finally saw hope, they naturally wanted to grab hold of it. There were a total of 27 people kneeling on the ground. This might not be worth mentioning in the eyes of others, but in Yang Chendong's eyes, this was not a small force. If used well, once it blossomed in the future, its effect would be shocking. It was like a small blade of grass. When it grew, it would also push away the boulder on its body, not to mention 27 people. Although he had long planned to take these people in, otherwise he would not have traveled hundreds of miles to get here. However, when it came to accepting these people, Yang Chendong was still very cautious. He knew very well what kind of effect these weapons would have on the current Ming dynasty. It was not an exaggeration to say that it would be shocking. If he really exposed it too early, he was afraid that he would become the target of public criticism. Unless he wanted to rebel, there would be no place for him in the world. Caution had always been Yang Chendong's way of life. Otherwise, after completing so many missions in his previous life, who knew how many times he would have died? Are you willing to take me as your master? Under the expectant eyes of everyone, Yang Chendong finally spoke slowly. Yes, we are willing. This time, not only Gao Xiong but also Yu Guang and the other 25 brothers all answered in unison. However, if you want to become my subordinate, it is not an easy thing. You have to go through all kinds of tests. It will be very difficult, very tiring, and you may even lose your lives. Have you thought about it? Of course, if anyone does not agree, feel free to say so. I will not make things difficult for anyone. I have prepared silver taels in the carriage. Anyone who leaves will get 5 taels of silver. With this, you can find a small place to start anew. So, I hope that when you make your choice you will think carefully. There is no need to think. We are willing to take the 6th young master as our master. Gao Xiong was the first to answer loudly. We are willing. The other 26 people said in unison. In the past, they were still pirates who had no intention of leaving. Now that they could see hope, who would be stupid enough to leave? Originally, Yang Chendong was worried about how he was going to deal with them once they left. After all, the power of the cannon could not be leaked. Now that everyone had stayed behind, it saved him the trouble of thinking about other things. All right, since you're all willing, then this young master will also make a request. Those who want to follow me will have to go through a test, and before you are fully recognized, there are still 2 things you need to do, and that is loyalty and obedience. Loyalty. The one who is loyal is naturally me. No matter when or where, I cannot betray you. Otherwise, I will not be able to rest in peace even if I die. But even if there is a bottomless abyss in front of you, no one can stop for any reason without my command. Can you do that? With his own advantages, Yang Chendong could do a lot of things. Of course, there would be many people he would need, and how to manage these people would become the most important thing, and the most important thing was loyalty. If these people were disloyal, they would very likely take out their own weapons to deal with him. If that was the case, he would be smashing his own foot with a rock. We can do it. In this life, we will only serve the 6th young master. If we violate this oath, may the heavens strike us with lightning and we will die a horrible death. Gao Xiong reacted quickly and was the first to state his position. Following that, Yu Guang followed suit, and the remaining 25 people all gave the same speech. Good. Seeing that everyone had made the oath, at that time the people were ignorant, and the binding force of the oath was still very strong. Yang Chendong chose to believe these people. Of course, this was only the initial belief. He would have various methods to make these people truly submit to him. After saying good, Yang Hodong shouted, "Now this young master will give the first order. Everyone stand up." Walala. Everyone stood up. What was worth mentioning was that Gao Xiong was still hugging the mini cannon and did not let go. Looking at him, it was as if he wanted to sleep with him and did not have any intention of letting go. Regarding this, Yang Chendong did not care. There were many good things like this in the warehouse. What could be used and what level could be used completely depended on how much progress these people would make and how much territory they would conquer. The Ming dynasty that had just experienced the rule of benevolence was still in its prime. It would only decline a few years later with the Tumu Castle rebellion. Going against the great Ming dynasty at this time was not a wise decision. Luckily, the current Ming Yingzong had banned the sea and this left a big gap. If they only developed their forces on the sea, Yang Chendong believed that they would not reveal their strength. More importantly, they would be able to train their troops and create a lot of wealth at the same time. At that time, they would be able to occupy an island. Even if they were to fall out with the Ming dynasty one day, they would have a way out. In order to achieve this, the 27 people in front of him were the foundation. How to make use of them was something that needed to be carefully thought out. Regarding this, Yang Qindong used the separation training method. The separation training naturally meant that he would split up their small group and transfer the separated group to his side to receive training. This way, after interacting with each other for a long time, they would naturally develop feelings for each other. Adding on the fact that he had shown his strong side, their loyalty would be guaranteed. At this time, everyone stood up as if they were waiting for Yang Qindong's second order. However, the sixth young master did not give out any more orders. Instead, he chatted with everyone as if they were having a normal conversation. At the same time, he also said that he could stay here for 2 days. In these 2 days, he would first teach everyone how to use the mini cannon in order to increase their military strength and prepare for the expansion of their forces. Out of the 27 people, 7 people with good eyesight and strength were selected to begin simple training. Among them was Yu Guang. Originally, Gao Xiong also wanted to follow, but was rejected by Yang Qindong. Since he was the leader of this group, he needed to plan and strategize and not personally kill the enemy. Of course, in order to convince Gao Xiong, Yang Qindong once again entered the carriage and took out 11 Type 81 automatic rifles. Commonly known as Type 81 automatic rifle, caliber 7, 62 mm, length 955 mm, weight 3.4 kg, magazine capacity 30 rounds, effective range 600 meters. Once the 11 Type 81 automatic rifles were taken out, the remaining 20 people's eyes lit up. They looked like men who had not seen women for a few years. They were just short of rushing forward to snatch them. Gao Xiong, come here. Ignoring everyone's excited gazes, Yang Qindong called Gao Xiong over and handed one of the rifles to him. Remember your gun number. Protect it as if it is your own life. If something goes wrong and your life is in danger, you must do one thing before you die. That is to throw this gun into the sea or smash it into pieces. Do your best to destroy it. Can you do it? Sixth young master, Gao Xiong can definitely do it. If it really comes to the point of death, I will destroy it first. I guarantee that it will be useless to anyone who obtains it. Gao Xiong replied loudly. His reward was a Type 81 automatic rifle from the future. There were still 10 left, but Yang Qindong did not immediately give them out. Instead, he looked at the 20 people and said, "Next, only half of you, which is only 10 people, will have the qualifications to be given a gun. As for who gets it, there will naturally be a competition. Next, everyone will practice aiming for an hour. After a day, I will give out bullets to everyone. Whoever performs well will naturally have the quota to be given a gun. Do you remember?" Hearing that 1 out of 2 people could have a gun, the 20 people's eyes instantly lit up. They all used the loudest voice they could muster and said, "Yes, sixth young master, please rest assured. We will do our best." The 10 guns were given out. 2 people in a group practicing shooting. In a situation where there were no bullets, Yang Qindong taught everyone how to shoot. The so-called 3 points and 1 line was not complicated. After he said it, they naturally learned it quickly. It must be said that marksmanship was not that easy to practice. Yang Qindong deeply understood that the so-called sharpshooters were all fed with bullets. Therefore his first target was Gao Xiong. After only practicing for 4 hours, Gao Xiong was fortunate enough to obtain a magazine of bullets and could finally shoot. Naturally he was very excited. At the same time he looked at Yang Qindong with a bit of emotion in his eyes. Gao Xiong thought that he was the first brother to be trusted. Otherwise, the sixth young master would not be afraid that he would turn around and aim with this godly weapon. Of course, how could the cautious Yang Qindong not know the existence of this danger? Therefore he put on a bulletproof vest early on. The safety of the Type 92 pistol was also turned on. Once he felt that something was wrong, he could immediately attack. In the worst-case scenario with the bulletproof vest, even if he was injured, it would be minimized to the lightest state. Gao Xiong finally fired his first shot. Under the envious and jealous gazes of his brothers, he fired at a temporary wooden sign that was erected 100 meters away from him. Bang! After a crisp gunshot, the wooden sign did not move at all. Instead, Gao Xiong's right shoulder trembled. That was the impact of the recoil. It was all because the opponent did not grasp the essentials of shooting. With a dejected expression, Gao Xiong was very depressed. At this time Yang Qindong did not say anything to ridicule him. He who had led who knows how many soldiers already knew when to criticize and when to encourage. Chapter 13. Hold the gun tightly and use your right shoulder to support the butt of the gun. Breathe steadily and look straight ahead. Once you've calmed down, try firing. Gao Xiong followed the instructions seriously. When he felt that his body was no longer as agitated and his breathing had stabilized, his right index finger slowly touched the trigger. Then he stared at the wooden sign in front of him. Bang! The second gunshot attracted the attention of the other brothers. When the first shot was fired, everyone laughed. Even though Gao Xiong was their boss, it did not stop them from making fun of him. Of course, it could also be said that they were venting their jealousy. Now that the second shot was fired, everyone was waiting for the result. The wooden sign 100 meters away was no longer as calm as before. The bullet went through the sign and flew out, leaving a black hole in it. I hit, ha ha. When he saw that he had hit the target, Gao Xiong jumped up excitedly and waved his gun as he shouted. Bang! A huge force suddenly hit Gao Xiong's waist. Under the powerful force, the man who weighed around 150 kilograms flew out horizontally and fell on the beach. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. They did not understand. Why did their boss get beaten up after hitting the target? They did not understand. That kick was from the sixth young master. His body did not look very majestic, so how did he have such explosive power? He was able to kick Gao Xiong, who was taller and stronger than him. Gao Xiong, who was kicked down, was also stunned. He did not know what he had done wrong. His waist was also hurting. He thought that the sixth young master was strong because of these godly guns that they had never seen or even heard of before. However, after this kick, he realized that he had underestimated the sixth young master's fighting ability. If the two of them were to fight, the chances of him winning would be very low. Throw the gun away. While he was still thinking about all kinds of questions, Yang Qindong's voice rang in his ears. Out of habit, he threw his Type 81 rifle to the ground. The gun was picked up again, but it was in Yang Qindong's hand. Then a voice of criticism was heard. I've already told you that you can't point your gun at anyone. But you were so excited just now that you've pointed your gun at the brothers beside you countless times. Do you know which of our brothers would lose their lives if you accidentally fired the gun? Finally, Gao Xiong realized what he had done wrong. In that instant, Gao Xiong stood up, his face red. Sixth young master, I was wrong. Do you know your mistake? 100 push-ups, immediately. There was no emotion on his face and even his voice was unusually cold. Yes. After Gao Xiong agreed, he began to do push-ups on the sand beside him. This was also a training method that had just been taught. It was said that it could train all the muscles in the body. While Gao Xiong was doing push-ups, the others also had a warning in their hearts. It was a deep lesson for them to not point their guns at people casually. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The grenade launchers used by Yue Guang and the others could already hit the target. Of course, this was the result of wasting hundreds of small shells. After leaving behind hundreds of shells, Yang Qindong took Yue Guang away, leaving behind a small team of 6 people to control 2 grenade launchers. It was more than enough. On the other side, 10 gunmen out of the 20 people had been selected. After firing thousands of bullets, they could basically hit the target. It was just a matter of their results. Among them, Gao Xiong's marksmanship was the best. He had a gun alone, which meant that he had a considerable advantage. The 10 gunmen who had won first place looked excited. They held their Type 81 rifles lovingly. The 10 people who did not win the competition looked bitter. They looked listless as if they had lost a family member. Alright, the 10 of you listen to orders. Hand over the guns in your hands to the others. You and Yue Guang will follow this young master back to Jianghu. Unexpectedly, Yang Qindong's words made a huge difference in the seemingly settled result. Before the 10 people could figure out why, the Type 81 rifles in their hands had already been snatched away by others. Then it was their turn to look bitter. Yang Qindong didn't even spare them a glance. He would speak with facts. He decided to leave. Before he left, he called Gao Xiong alone and handed him a 6x30 scope binoculars. After I leave, you have to find a way to strengthen the team. At the same time, you have to understand the situation around you, especially the situation in Qiqian. Qiqian is the location of Tainan City in the future Taiwan Island. Don't be shy. The next time I come, I don't want to see you with only 2 warships. Sixth young master, don't worry. With the things you gave us, we have the final say in the waters around here, Gao Xiong said confidently. It was no wonder he was so confident. With guns, cannons, and high-powered binoculars that could predict the enemy's movements, he really could not imagine who could be his opponent. He patted Gao Xiong's shoulder to comfort him. Yang Qindong turned around and left. Yu Guang and the other 10 brothers were reluctant to part with him. It was not easy to get guns and cannons, and they were the kind that were so powerful that they could be called divine objects. But they really did have to follow the 6th young master back to Jianghu. They did not know whether to be happy or sad. Yang Qindong did not have to drive the carriage himself. This time, sitting in the carriage, he finally experienced the feeling of being a shopkeeper who did not have to do anything. Even when they stopped to rest along the way, there were people who brought him food and drinks. The only drawback was that the carriage was too bumpy. If it were not for his good physique, he would have fallen apart. The journey back was obviously faster. After only 3 days, they returned to Jianghu Prefecture and the Yang family's old mansion. The old housekeeper, Yang Qindong, had already brought people back from the Yang family manor. When Yang Qindong returned to the old mansion, he not only saw them, but also Tiger's Mane, who had returned a day earlier. Tiger's Mane had been arranged to look for servants. Over the past few months, he had spent 300 taels of silver. Finally, he had not come back empty-handed. He had brought back 30 strong men. "Young master, you're finally back." When she saw Yang Qindong enter the backyard, Xiao Yin had already rushed over with tears streaming down her face. If it were not for their statuses, she probably would have thrown herself into the young master's broad embrace. "Hee hee, young master, aren't you fine? Don't cry. You won't look good if you become a little kitten." Yang Qindong reached out and scratched Xiao Yin's nose, then laughed heartily. "Young master." Tiger's Mane suddenly appeared in a half-kneeling position in front of Yang Qindong. "You're back. It must have been a tiring journey." Looking at Tiger's Mane, who had been his study companion since he was young, but liked to play with weapons, Yang Qindong's eyes flashed with a rare gratification. "It's not hard to work for young master. This time I've brought a total of 30 brothers. They're all young and strong and they don't have families to worry about." Hu Meng reported the results of the battle without even raising his head. This was one of the things that Yang Qindong admired about him. He was never arrogant because of his close relationship with others, and he knew his own status. "Good. Where are they?" Hearing that there were 30 people, Yang Qindong was very satisfied. If there were too few people, it would be useless. If there were too many, it would cause too much of a commotion. These 30 people were just right. In order not to attract attention, I arranged for them to be at the Yang family manor outside the city. Tiger's Mane was indeed very reliable. He had thought of everything that needed to be thought of. This made Yang Qindong even more gratified. "Let's have a meal together, then go take a look." After rushing for 3 days and eating a meal, he brought Tiger's Mane, Xiao Yin and Yu Guang, who were waiting outside the Yang family manor, and rushed out of the city. Yang family manor. It occupied 1,000 mu of land. It was done when Yang Rongfu was still alive. Now that the master and madam had passed away, the 6th young master, who stayed behind to look after the house, became the actual owner. This wasn't the first time he came to Yang family manor. He had come here many times when he ran in the past. It was the girl that Tiger's Mane liked. Her parents were tenants of Yang family manor. As soon as he entered, Yang Qindong instinctively asked jokingly, "Have you seen Feng'er?" "Not yet. I entered the manor last night. I didn't have time." It was rare for Tiger's Mane to blush. "Einer, give Tiger's Mane 20 taels of silver. Let him buy some suitable clothes for Feng'er. After the new year, propose marriage to Feng'er's parents in the name of the Yang family." Yang Qindong laughed loudly. He was clearly in a good mood. "Thank you, young master." With a plop, Tiger's Mane, who was driving the carriage, suddenly jumped down and knelt on the side of the road. "All right, come up and drive your carriage." "All right, tell this young master about those people." "Yes." After Tiger's Mane agreed, he turned and jumped onto the carriage. As he drove, he said, 28 of them are the subordinates of a man called Ting Shan. They were originally bandits, but because the taxes were too heavy, they couldn't live in the mountains. They have seen some blood. Most importantly, they have a good foundation and have trained a bit. When I went and told them that I would give them a new way out, they all followed me. All right, according to what young master said, there were originally more than 10 people. They didn't want to follow me, so I gave each of them 2 taels of silver to let them go. On the way back, we met a man called Lung Song. The funny thing was that he wanted to stop our group of 30 people by himself. We fought on the spot and he really knocked down 5 or 6 of our brothers. But in the end, we still managed to hold him down. He even shouted that he didn't eat his fill. Otherwise, our group of 30 people might not be his match. Alright, this person was born in the army. It was only because his money and food were embezzled by his superiors that he couldn't live anymore. He escaped and just happened to run into us. Interesting. Yang Qindong listened to Lung Song's story and became curious. He really wanted to see what this person was like. Chapter 14. The journey from the city to the Yang clan manor was only about 20 li, so it only took them about 2 hours to reach the manor. When the villagers saw that it was the sixth young master's carriage, they naturally stood respectfully on both sides. They were all grateful to their young master. Especially recently, the sixth young master would bring some good things to share with everyone whenever he came to the manor. He didn't look down on them at all just because they were masters and servants. Just this respect alone made everyone have a very good impression of him. This time the carriage didn't stop and kept going deeper into the manor. There was a forest there that covered an area of about 50 mu. Lung Song, Ting Shan and the others were arranged to stay there. When the carriage reached the forest, it stopped. Behind them were Yu Guang and 10 others. However, they were all out of breath from running all the way here. They lacked training. Yang Qindong looked at Yu Guang and the others and couldn't help but shake his head. They didn't even have to bear any weight. Otherwise, he didn't know if they would be able to run all the way here. Tiger's Mane stopped the carriage and stood behind Yang Qindong with Qiao Yin. Then a sharp whistle sounded. The sound of moving could be heard from the forest. Following that, 30 people dressed in all kinds of clothes rushed out of the forest. After these people appeared, they were all in different shapes and sizes. Some leaned against a tree to rest, some watched from afar, and some sat on the ground with a leaf in their mouth as they watched curiously. There was even a figure that directly ran past the crowd and rushed towards the carriage. "You're courting death." Seeing that someone was actually rushing towards the young master, Tiger's Mane's eyes widened. Then he moved forward to block the person. Bang bang. In the blink of an eye, the two punched each other. Tiger's Mane took 2 steps back. He saw that the black figure had already passed him and rushed towards Yang Qindong. Protect the sixth young master. When Yu Guang and the others saw this sudden scene, they were stunned for a moment. Then they seemed to have thought of something and rushed over from all directions. However, before they could arrive, the figure had already started fighting with Yang Qindong. A long fist flew towards Yang Qindong's face. The fist had yet to arrive, but the sound had already arrived. No one doubted the power of this punch. If it hit the body, even if it wasn't a serious injury, it would be at least 2 or 3 months. However, Yang Qindong only took a step back and tilted his head slightly to avoid such a fierce attack. After the first punch failed, a long elbow attack came from the side. This time it was aimed at Yang Qindong's lower jaw. It looked like it was going to break it. Once again he tilted his head to the side and dodged the lightning attack for the second time. From the beginning to the end, Yang Qindong had only moved his feet twice and neutralized the attack. After failing to gain any advantage from the 2 consecutive attacks, the attacker seemed to be a little impatient. With a loud shout, he leaped up like a fish and swept his leg towards Yang Qindong's neck. The attack range of this sweep was very wide. It was impossible to dodge even if one wanted to. Since he couldn't dodge, there was no need to dodge. Yang Qindong narrowed his eyes. Both of his hands stretched out like lightning and accurately caught the flying leg amidst the chaotic attacks. Then he forcefully turned around and swung his leg. That person was sent flying along with his leg. Under the powerful force, the person fell to the ground with a heavy thud. However, he was still forced to take a few steps back. Before he could regain his footing, Yang Qindong's counterattack had arrived. A flying fist smashed towards the attacker's chest like a flying immortal. This caused the person who came to raise his hands in panic, wanting to block the attacking hand gesture. The attacker's reaction was very fast. At the very least, he was able to think of defending himself before he could stabilize himself. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Unfortunately, this punch was a feint. Yang Qindong seemed to have expected the attacker to do this. The moment his right hand was blocked, he turned around and stretched out his left hand. Opening his palm, he changed his fist into a palm and slapped the attacker's eyes. This attack was fast and accurate. Caught off guard, the attacker's eyes were hit. For a moment, the attacker's eyes were blurred and he couldn't see anything clearly. Right at this moment, another large leg surged over and smashed into the newcomer's shoulder. The powerful force directly caused the newcomer to kneel on the ground with a plop. Then, without any reduction in strength, the leg continued to press down. Like a dog chewing on feces, the newcomer's face came into close contact with the ground. Good. Tiger's Mane was the first to react. He immediately clapped his hands and cheered. Then more than 40 people applauded and cheered. Among them, Qiao Yin was the most diligent. In just a short while her hands turned red. His leg was still in an extended position until the applause sounded. Then he slowly lowered it and shook his head. Not enough strength. Too slow. You don't know how to change your moves. Too bad. Lying on the ground, Lung Song, who was spitting out mud from his mouth, was really speechless. In the past he had always been very proud. Since he was very young he liked to practice martial arts. Because he was born in the military, the people around him were all barbarians. Over time he learned many practical things and became the #1 expert in his garrison. It was this achievement that made him very proud. He once thought that the heroes of the world were nothing more than this. If he was born in the era of Emperor Taizu Zhu Yuanzhang's era, he would definitely be in existence like Su De and Chang Yuchen. That was why he was always dissatisfied. In the end, when he found out that his superior had embezzled his pay and wanted to have no children, he left the camp and wandered the world. That was until he met Tiger's Mane, who was looking for someone. He fought against 30 people alone and was defeated in the end. He thought that it was because he was always wandering around and didn't have enough to eat. When he heard Tiger's Mane bragging about how powerful his young master was, how could he be convinced? He followed him and attacked when they met. He wanted to prove his strength and prove Tiger's Mane's ignorance. But who would have thought that after a round of fighting, he didn't gain the slightest bit of advantage. In the end he was beaten to the ground. After he came to the Yang family manor yesterday, he was given a full meal. Now he couldn't find any excuse to hide it. The defeated Lung Song stubbornly got up. Then he shook his head, which was still a little dizzy, and walked out of the manor. This time he had lost a lot of face. He even offended the young master here. Presumably there would be no place for him. If he didn't leave now, was he going to call people to attack him? Lung Song took a step out. But just as he took a step, he heard an extremely unfamiliar voice. This is the behavior of a coward. You can't beat him, so you choose to run away. I'm not a coward. Lung Chong, who was born fearless, turned around and explained. But when he saw that the person who spoke was the 6th young master, he could only lower his head. There was no other reason. His skills were inferior. How could he have the right to shout? If you're not a coward, then why did you leave? Yang Qindong felt that the other party was a talent. Moreover, his skills were indeed not bad. If he had just arrived here, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to beat this person. But now his body had almost recovered. Moreover, as he grew older, his strength would increase and he would become stronger. Therefore he liked this kind of martial talent even more. You're not leaving? Lung Song smiled bitterly and said, Could it be that I almost hurt you? Will the young master still tolerate me? Why wouldn't he tolerate you? Besides, do you think you can hurt me? What a joke. If you want to find an excuse, then leave on your own. On the other hand, if you want to stay, I will give you such an opportunity. You will also accept the young master's training and eventually become someone like me. Then, maybe I will give you a chance to defeat me. Yang Qindong knew that people with ability had personality. If he wanted to keep such a person by his side, then ordinary persuasion would be useless. It was better to provoke him. Perhaps it would be better to have a better effect. Sure enough, after these words, Lung Song didn't leave. He turned around and said, Okay, I'll see how you train. One day I will challenge you again and defeat you. I'll be waiting. After saying this, Yang Qindong didn't look at Lung Song again. Because he knew that this person wouldn't leave now and he wouldn't leave in the future. Let's gather. Yang Qindong nodded to Tiger's Mane beside him. After showing his strength, he began to lecture them. Everyone gather here. Tiger's Mane said with a red face. Just now he didn't block Lung Song. If it wasn't for the young master's strength, he would have been at a disadvantage. If that happened, it would be tantamount to dereliction of duty, and he deserved to die. Tiger's Mane, whose face was red and even a little angry, shouted. Soon, Ting Shan and Yu Guang came over with everyone, including Lung Song. However, no matter how you looked at it, they all looked sloppy. In the words of the old people, they didn't even look like they were standing. Looking at the 40 people standing together and occupying a large area, Yang Qindong shook his head. This was simply a pile of loose sand. It seemed that he still had to teach them in the future. Quickly stand up straight. Tiger's Mane was still anxiously urging them, but those people didn't seem to be very obedient. They were still standing in a relaxed posture. One couldn't blame them. One group was sea pirates and the other group was mountain bandits. They were used to being free and undisciplined. Now that someone suddenly wanted to control them, how could it be so easy? Bang! Just when everyone was still waiting to see how Tiger's Mane would react, a gunshot rang out. Everyone's eardrums seemed to have been shaken, and they all stood there, not knowing what to do. Just when everyone was curious about where the sound came from, a shocking scene appeared. Just behind them, a tree as thick as a person's wrist was actually cut in half. The thick tree trunk and leaves fell to the ground, giving people a great visual impact. Chapter 15. Oh my God, it's from that thing. At this moment, some of the sharp-eyed people noticed that Yang Qindong was holding a golden object in his hand. There seemed to be white smoke coming from it, and the sixth young master was blowing on it coquettishly. When he noticed that everyone was looking at him, Yang Qindong finally spoke, "Within 5 breaths of time, stand in a line of 10. Otherwise the thing in my hand will be blind." Before he finished speaking, gunshots rang out again. 3 more shots were fired and 3 tree trunks fell to the ground. Oh my God. It was unknown which brat shouted, but this shout was undoubtedly like a death knell, causing everyone's minds to tighten. Some people even touched their necks in an exaggerated manner to see if their heads were still on their bodies. The 4 consecutive shots were like an alarm bell, scaring everyone. The 40 people did not waste any time and quickly stood in a line of 10. Although they were not up to standard, everyone tensed their bodies and tried their best to do their best. As expected, they won't shed tears until they see the coffin, Yang Qindong muttered to himself, then put away the desert eagle in his hand. When he looked at everyone he said clearly, "The first time was a warning. The next time I see someone disobeying, I'll directly call them. I hope your heads are stronger than tree trunks." No, we'll all be obedient." Soon voices of agreement could be heard from the crowd. What kind of joke was this? This young master was so strong, and he even had a powerful hidden weapon that could break tree trunks. Who wouldn't be afraid? Only Yu Guang and the others who had seen guns knew that this was not a hidden weapon, but a very advanced gun. But knowing was one thing, they were still afraid. This was because they had seen the 6th young master use 4 weapons that they had never seen before. If it was so powerful, who knew if there would be more powerful weapons waiting for them? If they didn't listen to him, they would die with just a flick of his finger. And they would die without a complete corpse. Because with the Desert Eagle's tyranny, their heads would definitely be smashed into pieces. After using the deterrence effect, Yang Qindong began to speak. "You are all outstanding people, that's why you can stand here." First, he gave these people an affirmation. Sure enough, after hearing this, everyone's face was filled with pride. "But in my eyes, geniuses like you are nothing more than trash. Trash that can't even enter the mainstream." Following that, he flattered them to death, causing them to feel dizzy. Of course, there were some who were not convinced, but when they thought of the consequences of Lung Song's tree trunk, all of them tactfully shut their mouths. They knew that with their little strength, they were not worthy of the 6th young master's attention. Seeing that no one objected, Yang Qindong nodded his head in satisfaction. After the suppression, they had to be encouraged as usual. Otherwise, blindly suppressing them would only break their spines and make them unable to stand up again. However, your foundations are not bad. With a little bit of training under my hands, it is still possible for you to become stronger. So, from today onwards I will train you and make you stronger. Although it will be difficult for you to reach my height in the end, if you do well, you will still be several times stronger than you are now. Of course, the following days will be very difficult, so much so that some of you may not be able to bear it. You may think that you are better off dead. And I, the young master, am very fair. Now I will give you a chance to choose. If anyone wants to quit now, you can take the initiative to stand up and I will let you go." After saying this, Yang Qindong looked at the 40 people in front of him, waiting for their decision. Since they were able to come here, they already knew what it was like. Of course, no one would leave casually. As for the training that Yang Qindong said was worse than death, they were not afraid. These desperados had already put life and death out of their minds. If they were not afraid of death, why would they be afraid of training? Very good. Since none of you have chosen to quit, then from now on, you have already lost the ability to choose. Here you can either continue the training or die. There is no other choice. Saying the ugly words up front was to prevent people from deserting in the future. Although the possibility of this was very small, Yang Qindong still had to set up an ambush. In this way, when the training was too difficult, some people would have to think about whether they could bear the consequences if they wanted to leave. Seeing that no one spoke, Yang Qindong nodded his head in satisfaction. "I, the young master, am very generous to my own people. Since you have chosen to stay, you will be a member of the Yang family in the future. Of course, I will not let you suffer. From today onwards, you will have 3 meals a day and you can eat meat at noon and at night. Every month, you will also receive a monthly allowance of 1 silver tael. This is the basic bottom line. Once the training is over, it will be adjusted according to your results. When the time comes, those with good results will be able to become officials and receive a monthly allowance of 5 silver taels, or even more. All of this will depend on you to fight for yourselves. Wow! Once they heard that there would be meat to eat and 3 meals a day at that, all of them were overjoyed. At that time, ordinary people only ate 2 meals a day. Even so, there were some people who did not have enough to eat. And these men were between the ages of 17 and 25. This was the age when they could eat a lot. 2 meals a day was simply not enough to satisfy them. The reason they were able to come here was because the tiger's mane said that they would be able to eat until they were full. Now it seemed that he did not lie to them. Thus, everyone was in a much better mood. Seeing that just having a full meal could make these fearless men so happy, Yang Qindong did not know whether this was a kind of sorrow or not. To become a true member of the Yang family, not only must you be able to earn the respect of others, there are also 2 things that you must achieve: loyalty and obedience. Alright, let's begin the first subject of training, formation. A good army must first have strict military discipline. Being in a formation was a good experience for them. Tiger's mane, you will be in charge of teaching everyone the military posture. He called his first disciple, Tiger's mane, who had trained with him for many days in the Yang family's old mansion, and handed over the training of military posture to him. After saying all this, Yang Qindong said that he would come back in half a month to test the results and left. As soon as Yang Qindong left, the atmosphere at the scene relaxed a lot. Seeing this, Tiger's mane could not help but feel a little anxious. Everyone do not relax. If anyone does not perform well, I will truthfully report to the young master. When the time comes, you will have to deal with what will happen to you. Once these words were said, the people who originally wanted to relax and slack off immediately became alert. Once they thought of the broken tree trunk, they all became incomparably nervous. Alright, next, everyone follow me to learn the military posture. The main points are to put your heels together, your toes about 60 degrees apart, your legs straight, your lower abdomen slightly tucked in, and your chest out naturally. The first lesson of military posture began. This looked like nothing more than standing or standing a little straighter. It was such a simple thing. But when the simplest thing had to be done repeatedly, and it had to be done well, it wasn't that simple. In less than an hour, there were people who could not hold on. Tiger's mane mentioned the 6th young master and the tree trunk very well, giving these people enough strength to continue. Yang Qindong did not care about these people's training. He had already arranged for Wang Feng's family to send food to Tiger's mane and the others. They were originally the Yang family's tenant farmers. In their eyes, the Yang family was their sky. Even if they saw something, they would not casually say it. Furthermore, he had given the Wang family enough benefits. Even if it was for the sake of the benefits, they would not dare to say anything. When he went, there were more than 10 people. When he came back, he only brought Xiaoyin back to the old mansion. When he came back, his cousin Yang Fu was already waiting in the backyard side hall. When he saw Yang Qindong, Yang Fu came over with a warm expression. 6th cousin, I heard you went out to play a while ago? Cousin Fu, there is no need to be so polite between us. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Yang Qindong asked teasingly as he washed his hands in the basin Xiaoyin brought over. Recently, Yang Fu had earned quite a bit of money by following Yang Qindong. With the unique delicacies and the storytelling of the legend of the Condor heroes, business was unbelievably good. Even if one wanted to book a table there, they had to be 3 days in advance. Because of this, many high officials and nobles of Jianghu Mansion approached Yang Fu, wanting to use his connections. In addition, with the introduction of the toilet bowl, the clean and hygienic environment was praised by the rich. If anyone did not have such a thing in their home, it was equivalent to being actively excluded from the upper circle. The only person who could make a toilet bowl was the Yang family's craftsman, Li Xuanfu. Although some craftsmen had begun to imitate it, the precise parts were not up to standard, so the results were not very good. Because of this, everyone knew about the relationship between Yang Qindong and Yang Fu. There were even more people who came to ask him to install it earlier. Having earned money and gained face, Yang Fu could be said to be very proud of his success. However, no matter how proud he was, when he saw Yang Qindong, Yang Fu restrained himself a lot. This was because he knew that he had relied entirely on this 6th cousin of his to get to where he was today. This was because Yang Fu did not want to be in the limelight and left all the outside matters to him. Otherwise, others would have come directly to the Yang family's old mansion and not go to his place. Yang Qindong's direct manner of speaking did not make Yang Fu feel the slightest bit awkward. On the contrary, he even came up and said shamelessly, "Sixth cousin, the legend of the Condor heroes has been finished. Now that the physical book has been released, the business of the Four Seas restaurant is not as good as before. Do you think there are any other good stories?" Chapter 16. The matter of printing the books had been handed over to the old housekeeper, Yang Hai. At that time, he had even given 500 taels of silver as a foundation. After some work, the physical books were indeed printed. Because the cost of production was too high, only 100 books were printed the first time. However, what was unexpected was that even though one book was sold for 20 taels of silver, it was still sold out in half a day. Not only that, there were even more people who had complaints because they couldn't buy it. Therefore, they decided to print another 500 books. But no matter what, with the appearance of the physical books, the craze for shooting condors had somewhat died down. Although repeating the story could still attract a lot of people, who would be willing to cook cold rice when there was a new product. This was why Yang Fu came to ask for a favor. "Oh, the restaurant's business is not good?" Yang Qindong asked in confusion. Even if there was no new story to tell, the role of MSG and other things could not be replaced. They could still attract a large number of diners. "No. The business of the restaurant is still very good, but compared to before, the number of people who make reservations 3 days in advance is a lot less. I'm just preparing for a rainy day. Don't I want the business to be better?" Yang Fu didn't dare to lie. This was not the time when Yang Qindong wanted to work with him. If he wanted to change people now, who knew how many people would be begging him? Yang Fu's attitude was very proper, and his position was also very low. He even had a fawning expression on his face. Yang Qindong smiled and said, "All right, it's rare for Cousin Fu to think so far ahead. Xiao Yin, bring me the manuscript of my new Xiao Li's Flying Dagger." Xiao Li's Flying Dagger was written by a great clan, Gulong. It talked about the emotional entanglements between Xiao Li's sworn brother Long Xiaoyun and childhood sweetheart Lin Shirin after Xiao Li's Tanhua Li Xuanhuan resigned. He also talked about his sad love with Jinghong fairy Yang Yen, and his sworn brother Ah Fei, which led to a series of grievances. As the saying goes, flying daggers have no lovers but have feelings. Heroes have a weakness for the charms of beauties. There were too many descriptions of love and hatred. He believed that it would be very suitable for young people's tastes. As soon as he heard that there was a new book, Yang Fu became spirited. His eyes shone brightly. When Xiao Yin walked out with the book, he disregarded his status and went up to her. He was just short of snatching it. "Get someone to tell it slowly this time. Good stories don't come around all the time. Also, I will release the physical book later. During this time, I will stay at the Yang Qindong Manor to calm down and write a good book." Seeing Yang Fu's performance, Yang Qindong chuckled. "Okay, sixth cousin, don't worry. I will put the manuscripts bit by bit. I will try my best to talk for a few more days. If not, I will arrange for someone to personally go to the Yang Manor to look for you." Yang Fu patted his chest and promised. "Okay, Cousin Fu, do as you see fit." Yang Qindong didn't want to be entangled in this issue. The restaurant was for the sake of earning money to support his huge expenses. Writing a book was just to increase his fame. But in the end, everything still depended on strength. He had always been very clear about this. Satisfied, Yang Fu left. Soon, a frenzy of Xiao Li's flying daggers was set off in the city. It was unknown who was very business-minded and got some paper daggers that could be hung on the body. Unexpectedly, they were sold out in a short period of time. Nowadays, on the streets, many young masters and young master would often wear a paper dagger next to the jade pendant on their waist. Of course, Yang Qindong wouldn't copy them. He still had a lot of things to do. Now, he had a lot of drawings in his hands which gave people a strange feeling. But if a modern person saw them, they wouldn't be surprised. Because they were ordinary fitness objects such as single and parallel bars. Of course, there were also the common 400-meter obstacles used by soldiers. Go and call blacksmith Wu Gang. Wu Gang had been in charge of researching the crossbow. Just last night, the first portable crossbow had been completed. With the first one, it was naturally easy to handle. Next, he just needed to continue to expand the production. And the reason he called him was to make the single and parallel bars. For something like this, it was easy to handle as long as there were drawings. There was no need for any technology. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, it was the promised half a month. Early in the morning, he took Xiao Yin to the Yang family manor outside the city in a carriage. Behind them there were several carriages with training molds in them. Beside the forest of the Yang family manor, 40 people were standing in 4 neat rows. When Yang Qindong stepped down from the carriage, the instructor, Tiger's man, ran over with big strides. Then he stopped and reported seriously. Reporting to young master, the 40 people participating in the training are all in place. Please check. Good. Yang Qindong nodded and walked to the front of the 40 people. Listen to the command at ease, attention. Everyone turn right, walk in unison, run in unison, walk in unison, march in unison. After a round of inspection, the 40 people's movements were neat and uniform. Although there were some people who made small mistakes sometimes, with only half a month of training, the results were considered good. Very good. You have all completed the first training course with great excellence. Therefore, this young master announces that there will be more food tonight. There will be enough rice and meat. Waves of cheers were heard. Previously, the 40 people were indeed very worried about whether they could pass Yang Qindong's inspection. Now that their hearts were at ease, they were naturally happy. Good. Before that, we need to set up some things. These will be your training tools in the future. After the order was given, no one hesitated. They all ran to the carriages behind them and moved the tools out one by one. They moved them to a 10 mu open space in the forest. Long ago, he had arranged for people to build a row of simple dormitories here. Fortunately, the weather in Fujian was good at this time. This place would become their training ground for a period of time. Once they passed the test, these people would eventually become seeds, become bone warriors, and even become world-renowned generals. There was strength in numbers. The single and parallel bars were quickly buried according to the specifications. The more troublesome part was the tools for the 400-meter obstacle course. Fortunately, with Yang Qindong's guidance, they were more or less done before the sky turned dark. When night fell, a large batch of prepared meat and vegetables were delivered to the large tent in the forest. The food, which had been seasoned with MSG, was naturally exceptionally delicious. Everyone ate until their stomachs were bloated. After that, other than the 2 who were responsible for keeping watch at night, everyone else went to rest. Qiao Yin had also prepared the young master's bed early in the morning. Yang Qindong did not go to sleep immediately. Instead, he called Tiger's mane and asked about everyone's performance. When he found out that everyone was very enthusiastic, he nodded in satisfaction. These are all good seedlings. They should be properly trained. How about this? You and this young master will work hard together tonight. The moon hung high in the sky. When it shone on the ground, it was as if a silver veil had covered the earth. 2 black shadows moved like agile monkeys. They entered the barracks as if they were entering a no-man's land. In just a quarter of an hour, the 2 reunited. After they nodded at each other, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded. It was especially ear-piercing in the silent night. Beep 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 beep. When the whistle sounded, many people were still immersed in their dreams. Some were even smacking their lips as if they were reminiscing about the delicious food they had eaten that night. Suddenly someone shouted, "Assemble! Emergency assembly!" The voice was abrupt and nervous. When the people heard the shout, they realized the seriousness of the situation. One by one, they hurriedly got up and began to put on their clothes. After a series of rustling sounds, a shout suddenly sounded. "Motherf asterisk her, who saw my shoes? Bastard, which bastard took my shoes away? If I catch him, I'll spank his ass until it blossoms. Hurry up and assemble. Hurry. Hurry." Outside the barracks, Tiger's mane's voice sounded one after another. It was like a death sentence. After half a month of training, everyone had gotten used to one thing. When a military order was issued, if anyone did not complete it on time, they would receive inhumane corporal punishment. No one wanted to be punished, so one by one they ran out barefoot. Including the 2 who were standing guard, a total of 40 people stood in 4 rows on the field under the moonlight. Bang! The torches were suddenly lit. One by one they lit up the field. Soon it was as bright as day. It also made everyone recognize each other. For a moment, the sound of laughter could be heard. Those who rushed out in a hurry were truly in a state of disgrace. Some of them buttoned their clothes wrong, some of them wore their pants inside out, and some of them even wore other people's clothes. Some of them even went bare-chested because of this. While everyone was laughing, Yang Qindong walked to the front of the group under the protection of Tiger's mane. When everyone saw that incomparably serious face, everyone quickly shut their mouths. Some of them even lowered their heads, as if they did not want the 6th young master to see them in such a sorry state. Suddenly the whole field quieted down. When everyone could hear each other's breathing, Yang Qindong's voice also sounded at this moment. You have all disappointed me. His opening remark made the atmosphere turn cold in an instant. Look at all of you. You all call yourselves heroes. You all have no one in your eyes. You all think that the heavens are number 1, the earth is number 2, and you are number 3. But it's just an emergency assembly, and you all have turned into this state? Your clothes are untidy and you still have the nerve to make fun of others? Even I feel embarrassed for you all. Tonight, your Captain Tiger's Mane told me that you all have been performing well recently. This young master was even happy about it. But now it seems that this is not the case at all. You all have been lying to me. Faced with Yang Qindong's questioning, everyone wanted to say no. They wanted to say that they had been training hard for the past half a month. But when they thought about their current performance, no one could refute anything. Chapter 17. Even Leng Song, who was usually the most arrogant, lowered his head at this moment because he, like everyone else, couldn't find his shoes. This made him, who prided himself on being strong, feel very embarrassed. No one refuted, but that didn't mean that Yang Qindong wouldn't continue. The 2 sentries didn't fulfill their duties and were touched by someone, but they didn't even know. Everyone else is the same. 38 pairs of shoes, do you know what this represents? Let me tell you, in wartime this represents 38 heads. Since I can take away your shoes without leaving a trace, I can kill you without leaving a trace. Boom. Everyone felt as if a thunderclap had exploded in their minds. That's right, they didn't even know that their shoes were taken away under the bed. If the other party wanted to kill them, wouldn't they really have their throats slit? Everyone knew the seriousness of the matter. Their so-called vigilance had become the most powerless words at this time. They couldn't even say a word to defend themselves. Looking at the silent crowd, Yang Qindong nodded lightly. Very good, it's best to learn from your mistakes. Since none of you refuted, at least it means that you are sensible and reasonable. But I think that some of you might disagree and think that this isn't a battlefield, so how could there be danger? Why do you need to be on guard? Some people would even think that everyone had eaten too much at night, and that was why they had lost their sense of vigilance. No, you're wrong. What is a soldier? It's a group that can enter a battle state at any time. If the enemy really comes, they won't greet you. There's a saying that forgetting to fight is dangerous. I want to give it to you. This young master also wants to say that the reason why soldiers are respected is because they are responsible for the safety of the country. In order to fulfill this responsibility, they must be in a state of readiness at any time, and their nerves must be tense at all times. Only in this way can they not be called soldiers in vain and deserve to be called the backbone of the country. In the future, there will be such emergency night gatherings at irregular times. If you fail, there will be heavy punishment. And for your incompetent performance today, and to help you digest your food, this young master orders that the 5 kilometers run will begin. Everyone come up and find your shoes. After saying this, Yang Qindong handed over the command to Tiger's Man and turned around to go to sleep. Using the requirements of modern soldiers to ask Leng Song and the others might be a bit harsh. However, battles were never child's play. Even in the era of cold weapons it was the same. In a battle between 2 armies, there were many cases of camps being raided, and there were countless cases of an entire army being wiped out because of negligence in defense. Since this army was under his command, naturally Yang Qindong wouldn't allow it. Under the leadership of Tiger's Man, 40 people found their shoes and began to run in the field. They didn't blame anyone. It was all their own failure. It was just that they didn't know that the emergency gathering and the 5 kilometers run at night were just appetizers. Early the next morning, when many people still felt that they didn't have enough sleep, they were called to gather and welcomed Yang Qindong, the King of Hell. No one knew who came up with the term King of Hell, but it was very realistic. Because Yang Qindong made his own requirements as soon as he opened his mouth. From today onwards, there would be a 10 kilometers cross-country run in the morning, noon, and evening. In the morning and evening, there would be 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats leaning against the wall. In the morning and evening, there would be a 400 obstacle jump and free rock climbing. In the morning and evening, there would be a requirement that the weight of all activities should not be less than 25 kilograms. In addition, all activities must be completed before mealtime. Although they didn't quite understand what pull-ups and free rock climbing were, the 30 kilometers run in a day was enough to frighten them. Without waiting for them to come back to their senses, Yang Qindong continued, "In the future there will be a 2-hour cultural class every 2 days. This young master will personally teach you how to read and write, teach you arithmetic, teach you how to fight, sign language and draw maps. If you perform well, you will be rewarded with a Type 92 pistol. Bang bang bang. After finishing his words, Yang Qindong raised his right hand. 20 steps away, 3 hanging porcelain bottles exploded in the air. If you perform well and reach the final assessment, you will be rewarded with a gun like this. Beep 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 beep. There was another series of gunshots. 50 steps away, 5 porcelain bottles exploded one after another. In the front was a Type 92 pistol, and in the back was a Type 95 automatic rifle. The appearance of these 2 firearms made everyone's eyes light up. Even for Yu Guang and the rest, this was their first time seeing the 95 style. They only felt that it was even cooler than the Type 81 assault rifle they had fought before. Imagine if they could bring such a weapon back, how envious would their brothers be. The appearance of these 2 firearms was like a shot in the arm. It stimulated everyone. At this moment, everyone felt that the 6th young master was so cute. It was as if training harder was nothing. Their morale was raised. Yang Qindong waved his hand. Under the supervision of Tiger's Mane, everyone started their first 10 kilometers run of the day. Everyone consciously picked up the 25-kilogram sandbags and put them on their bodies. Facing the rosy clouds of the morning sun, the 40 men took large strides and began a new day. Yang Qindong had already returned to his dorm. He wasn't going to rest. He wanted to make the most reasonable training plan. In his plan, in the next 2 months he would teach them shooting, bombing, assassination, night fighting, rescue, assault, decapitation, ambush, rescue, wilderness survival, ambush, camouflage, climbing, 3-3 tactical joint attack, and even flying and diving. Of course, cultural classes were also necessary. Yang Qindong always believed that an army without culture would be hard to talk about loyalty. It would also be impossible to become a real Iron Army. The plan was very grand, but when it was executed, it was naturally very difficult. However, Yang Qindong had confidence, and he also had confidence in these 40 brothers. After running 10 kilometers in the morning, no one complained about being tired. According to the 6th young master's words, training wasn't for others. It was for oneself and also for oneself. Do you want to have a better life and a better future? Then work hard. However, 10 kilometers running wasn't considered hard. They were originally a bunch of bumpkins. They couldn't even afford a horse. Usually they relied on their feet to do things. In addition, when they came back in the morning, there was enough food to replenish their lost energy and nutrients. In order to eat a full meal, many people thought that the training was worth it no matter how hard it was. However, when they faced the first training session after breakfast, everyone began to call out the nickname of Instructor Yama in their hearts. Not for other reasons, but because in front of them was a 50-meter-long path of thorns. No one knew where the 6th young master got it from. In short, thorns were spread all over the ground. According to Yang Qindong's explanation, everyone had to crawl from here in a crawling manner. This is a test of your sense of obedience. As long as an order is given, even if there is a bottomless abyss in front of you, you must carry out the order. Now the first group, get ready. Yang Qindong didn't make any impassioned speeches. After briefly explaining the situation, Yang Qindong began to issue orders. The first group had a total of 5 people. Lung Song was among them. From the emergency gathering last night to the gunshots this morning, his heart had been beating uncontrollably for a long time. He seemed to be born as a soldier and had the spirit of not admitting defeat. However, people like him also had extremely strong self-esteem. He would never allow anyone to look down on him because it was more painful than taking his life. Now that he heard Yang Qindong's order, he was the first to lie down on the ground and crawl toward the thorns in front of him. With Lung Song taking the lead, the other 4 people only hesitated for a moment before they followed suit and lay down on the ground. The brambles were originally covered in thorns, especially when they were crawling. It was easy to imagine how painful it would be when those thorns pierced into the flesh. However, the performance of the first group of 5 was indeed very good. No one complained. At most they frowned. Then, regardless of the blood flowing out of their arms and bodies, they bravely moved forward. The second group, get ready. Tiger's Mane, Xiaoyin, prepare the water for disinfection and take out the prepared gauze and alcohol. Looking at Lung Song's performance with satisfaction, Yang Qindong nodded and ordered. Since they were his soldiers, of course he couldn't let their lives be in danger because of training. Therefore he prepared everything early. As for the gauze, alcohol, and oral anti-inflammatory medicine, the warehouse could be described as a mountain. He could also use this opportunity to teach everyone the essentials of simple first aid movements. Could be said that he killed two birds with one stone. Group after group, a total of 40 people, no one found any excuses. They all passed through the thorns, causing everyone to be injured all over. Fortunately, they were well prepared and didn't delay the following training. However, Yang Qindong still decided to change the following class into a cultural class. And before the class, he also taught everyone a song. Song of Comrades. Comrades are as close as brothers. I hope to call us together. You come from the border, I come from the mainland. We are all children of the country. Comrades. This intimate name, this noble friendship, unite us into a steel collective. A few small changes were made to the lyrics to better fit the current situation. Yang Qindong's voice was not bad. He once played a musician during a mission, so singing a military song was a piece of cake. Coupled with the fact that the song itself was very simple, it was quickly accepted by everyone. Unknowingly, when they took the lead again, there were already people who began to sing. Chapter 18. Yang Qindong believed that once everyone got used to this strange song and tone, it wouldn't be long before they would be unable to forget it. They would also have a deeper understanding of the meaning and content of the lyrics. Yang Qindong's plan was not bad. The song not only boosted everyone's morale, but it also brought everyone closer. What he didn't expect was that after these people joined the army, the first thing they did when they led the troops was to climb the thorny bushes. The second thing they did was to sing the Song of Comrades. This became a custom and tradition that was passed down. The song was only taught for half an hour and everyone basically knew it. After that, it was just a process of familiarizing themselves with the lyrics. After that, Yang Qindong took the lead and began to teach everyone cultural lessons. He started with the simplest, learning how to read. In the Ming dynasty, the literacy rate was very low. Or rather, it was always like that. Only certain families had access to books. This was also the reason why scholars had such a high social status. Not to mention them, even before the new China's literacy program, the illiteracy rate was 80%. Since Yang Qindong was here, of course he couldn't abide by this rule. At least in the places he could influence, he had to try his best to make as many people literate as possible. Needless to say, the army was even more so. The great founder of the country once said, "An army without culture is a stupid army, and a stupid army cannot defeat the enemy." In order to give everyone time to self-study in the future, Yang Qindong chose to teach everyone pinyin first. After that, he would make a dictionary. Since there were many samples in the warehouse, he just had to copy them. This way, whenever and wherever they didn't know a word, they wouldn't have to ask others. At the same time, it could solve the problem of traditional Chinese characters and make writing more concise. Today, I will teach everyone pinyin and the understanding of simplified numbers. Numbers are divided into 10, and there are 63 pinyin characters. Among them, there are 23 consonants, 24 vowels, and 16 of them can be read as a whole. Everyone was seriously looking at the little blackboard in front of them. Even Tiger Edge and Xiaoyin had moved a little platform to listen and watch. They were looking at the beautiful symbols that the chalk had drawn on the blackboard. Everyone knew that whether or not they passed the cultural lesson would affect their future prospects. Xiaoyin heard from the young master that she would become a cultural teacher in the future. She had to learn more to be better able to teach others. However, at this moment she couldn't listen at all. She couldn't understand where the young master learned these so-called strange things. Also, where did he get that gun from? Why was it so powerful? In the past few months, the young master gave her a feeling of familiarity. Familiarity was familiarity because of his concern for her. Strangeness because of his outstanding abilities, and bewitching. She really didn't know what kind of woman young master would marry in the future. That would really be the blessing of 8 lifetimes of cultivation. After all, she was to follow the young master, for her to follow him for the rest of her life. Isn't it better if the young to her? To say to, of course. Time passed day after day. Everyone's improvement was very obvious. After going through the trials of the modern army, the training method had already proven its feasibility. In addition, people at this time were used to living a hard life, so they were even more able to endure hardship. This group of 40 people quickly changed. They were like outstanding soldiers who had transformed. Little Li's flying dagger became the new trend that everyone sought after. Li Xuanwan's name became a household name in Jianghu. Naturally, the business of the Four Seas restaurant also rose along with it. Reservations were made 3 days in advance. There were even people who prepared pens and ink, intending to record everything the storyteller said and compile it into a book. There were even people comparing who was more powerful between Guijing and Li Xuanhuan. Because of this, there were even cases of scholars coming to blows. When Yang Qindong heard about this, he laughed. It wasn't a matter of the same era at all. They were originally made-up people. How could one compare them? However, this matter also allowed him to see the influence of the two stories. He decided to add fuel to the fire. He took some time to go back to the Yang family's old mansion and found the old housekeeper Yang Hai. He had him make a Yang Bao. The main content of Yang Bao's plan was to republish the story of the Condor and the Little Li's Flying Dagger in installments. In between, there were some articles promoting the strength of the Ming dynasty. These things could be asked to write by famous scholars. He told them that once they used the manuscript, they would be rewarded handsomely. He also left some time to write miscellaneous articles. For example, it was easy to get sick if you ate unboiled water, so you had to boil it before drinking it. For example, you had to wash your hands before and after meals to prevent diseases from entering your mouth. For example, you had to take a bath after being drenched in rain to prevent catching a cold. It was still the same idea as before. After all, although the Little Li's Flying Dagger and Little Li's Flying Dagger were popular, their limitations were too strong. They were mainly in the vicinity of Jianghu Prefecture. He wanted to spread these good things and open up his reputation. It was not enough to rely on such a small place. Once he was famous, Yang Bao would add in some articles that flattered the emperor. This way he would be able to gain the emperor's favor and favor. In the future, when Yang Qindong did things, it would be best if he could have an official as a cover. Letting the articles of famous scholars enter would be able to gain the favor of the scholars. This was also very important. They were currently the main power in the imperial court. In the end, he would create a small percentage of miscellaneous articles to benefit the people. This could be considered a subtle change. Once the matter of the newspaper was mentioned, Yang Hai naturally did as he was told. With the sixth young master, the Yang family's old residence did not lack money. Large amounts of money flowed in every day. It could not be stopped. Not to mention, according to the sixth young master, not only could running a newspaper make money, it could also increase one's reputation. How could this not be in action? Yang Bao was in the midst of his preparations. Dao Feng's training had come to an end. The name Dao Feng was personally given by Yang Qindong. He also said that in the future, only those who had undergone such training and had excellent results in the final test would be given the name Dao Feng. As such, just this name alone was enough to make many people excited and tremble. The 3 months of formal training had come to an end. It was the first month of 1446, the 11th year of the Zhengtong dynasty. Yang Qindong grew another year, becoming a 16-year-old young man. It was almost the new year, and the entire Yang family village was in a festive mood. Because he had made too much money in business, Yang Qindong simply reduced the land tax for most of the tenant farmers in the Yang family manor. Just based on this, everyone was beaming with joy. However, in the depths of the forest in the Yang family village, the atmosphere was extremely tense. It was not because of anything else. Up until last night, all the tests had ended. Next was to wait for the assignments. In front of everyone there was a form to be filled out. This was the application form for the university entrance examination. There were a few areas written on it. There were Navy, Army, instructor and private Yang family members to choose from. Among them, the Navy had the most people, 20, the Army had 10, 5 instructors and 5 private soldiers. From this, it could be seen that the main direction of development was the sea. This was also why Yang Qindong did not want to have any conflicts with the Ming dynasty government. According to the requirements, they were willing to fill out the form. However, this did not mean that they would become what they wished for. In the end, it was up to the sixth young master to decide and assign them according to ability. For example, if there were not enough places for the Navy, they would naturally have to fill in from other candidates. Needless to say, Yu Guang and the other pirates would naturally sign up for the Navy. Apart from that, the 5 private Yang family members were the most popular. To be able to become a private Yang family member was equivalent to having the opportunity to be by the side of the sixth young master. Naturally, this was what everyone hoped for. Although Instructor Yama was a bit harsh during training, he was really good to them at other times. Their food, shelter, and clothing were all taken care of to the best of their ability. Even if their parents and relatives were here, they might not be able to do so. Moreover, the sixth young master was not short of money. Any business that he participated in was an existence that made a lot of money. Following the young master, how could there be no benefits? If it was possible, even if all 40 of them became servants of the Yang family, they would still be willing. There were only 5 places, so they could only fight for it. For a time, apart from Yu Guang and the other 10 people who signed up for the Navy, only Leng Song did not sign up to be a private Yang family member. The other 29 people all filled in the first column. After Yang Qindong saw the form that everyone filled in, he could not help but smile bitterly. But at the same time he was curious about Leng Song. He knew that Yu Guang and the others signed up for the Navy for a reason. They originally came from there, so it was not surprising that they returned to the sea. But why did Leng Song sign up for the army? Call Leng Song in. With curiosity, Yang Qindong wanted to know what he was thinking. Soon Leng Song, who was full of energy, but his face was also a lot darker, walked into the room that belonged to Yang Qindong. As soon as he entered, his feet were close together and he stood at attention. After 3 months of training, he already looked like a veteran in the army, especially the military salute, which was very standard. Salute over. Yang Qindong naturally got up and returned the salute, then he sat down. While looking at Leng Song's assessment results, he asked casually, "Among the 40 people, your results are really the best. You did not let the young master down, but why did you fill in the army in the end?" Reporting to the young master, "You said that the army is the tiger of the land in the future, and I am willing to be a tiger." Leng Song replied with a sonorous and powerful voice. "Then why didn't you want to be a private Yang family member?" That is my private army." Yang Qindong suddenly looked up and asked his own question. Reporting to the young master, "It is not that Leng Song does not want to, it is that I cannot." "Oh? Why not?" Yang Qindong's interest was aroused. Chapter 19. Reporting to young master, "You already have Hu Meng by your side. I once sparred with him in private and he is very strong. Right now, it is only because he is still young, but once he is over 20 years old, it will be very difficult for me to be his opponent. That's why I think that with Tiger's Mane by young master's side, it's enough to ensure your safety." "It'd be a waste for me to stay," Leng Song said with his eyes looking straight ahead. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't say. In terms of strength, Yang Qindong was probably the strongest one. Staying behind to protect someone who was stronger than him, he felt that it was inappropriate no matter how he looked at it. Finally knowing the reason why Leng Song didn't want to join Yang Qindong's private soldiers, Yang Qindong laughed and said, "All right, I got it. You can go now." Leng Song's matter was just an interlude. After a whole morning's evaluation and lunch, which Yang Qindong also called the next meal, the 40 people gathered on the sports field. His gaze swept over the 40 people one by one. Now he could accurately call out the name of any one of them. He even knew their personalities and where their strengths and weaknesses were. After 3 months of interaction, they had already developed a deep bond with each other. However, all good things must come to an end. In the military's words, it was called a camp made of iron but flowing soldiers. That was suitable for the veterans, and also suitable for the new recruits to be assigned to the company. "Very good, you didn't disappoint me. Everyone's final test results are above good. To be able to change so much in 3 months, to be honest, I'm very happy. From now on, you're officially a soldier of the Yang family." After receiving Yang Qindong's praise, the 40 people clapped and celebrated in unison. Some of them even shed tears. Only they themselves knew how they had managed to survive these 3 months and what they had gained. And what they gained would accompany them for the rest of their lives, engraved in their bones and never forgotten. "You're all good. Now I've fulfilled my promise. From now on, you're a member of Leng Feng and this title will be glorious. Perhaps there will be new people joining us in the future, but they will not have the chance to be personally trained by me. They will be trained by you all. Therefore, I will first announce the names of the 5 instructors." To be honest, those who were able to persist for 3 months were all people who had gone through inhuman trials. In their opinion, with such ability, they should have joined the Yang family army. Although this army might not even exist yet, as long as there were people like them, it was equivalent to having hope. Therefore, there weren't many people who really wanted to be an instructor. However, everyone had their own ambitions. There were still some people who wrote their second wish to be an instructor. Perhaps they also wanted to be like Yang Qindong and train more outstanding talents. Hiyang Shiri, Qiming, Zhu Ziguang, Song Deshang. The 5 of you will be the first batch of instructors. In the future, no matter who wants to join Cold Front, they will need at least 2 of you to agree. This is the authority given to you by the young master, and I hope that you will use this authority well. What I have to say is, if any of the people you recommend are qualified, it will directly affect you. If the consequences are too severe, it might be the fuse that will cause the name of Cold Front to be taken away from you. Do you understand? Understood. Rest assured, sixth young master, we will do our best. Those who are not strong enough will not be given the name of Cold Front. He Yang and the other four stepped forward, expressing their determination. Very good. Tiger's Mane, bring out the equipment. Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction, then gave the order to the people behind him. Tiger's Mane walked out, carrying 5 dictionaries, a Type 81 rifle, a small crossbow, a trident, a military knife, a compass and a Type 54 pistol. 195 mm in length, 850 g in weight, 8 rounds in magazine, effective range of 50 meters. A pistol and a Type 81 rifle were given to them. Yang Qindong said, I didn't give you the Type 95 because you will appear as instructors in the future. Normal soldiers will need to familiarize themselves with the Type 81 rifle first. I hope you can understand. The pistols are for you to protect yourselves. Understood. He Yang and the other 4 were very excited. They originally thought that they would only get the Type 95 pistol. Although it was changed to a Type 81 rifle, they also had a small pistol. That was something that they had always dreamed of. After arranging the instructors, he announced the Navy, Yu Guang and the rest of the 20, and the Army, Lung Song, Tingshan and the rest of the 10. Finally, he announced the 5 Yang family guards who would be Yang Qindong's private soldiers. For convenience, he gave the 5 of them code names Beta Persei, Yang San, Yang Si, Yang Wu and Yang Lu. Needless to say, Yang Yi was naturally Tiger's Mane. Everyone received the Type 95 pistol and 100 rounds of ammunition. They were all very excited. But when Yang Qindong took out 3 Type 92 pistols, the 40 people looked at him excitedly. They didn't forget that at the beginning, the 6th young master said that he would reward the person with the best results with a Type 92 pistol. Seeing everyone's eyes, Yang Qindong said in a loud voice, Lung Song, Yu Guang, Tingshan, come out. Yes. 3 voices sounded in unison. The 3 people walked out at the same time and then trotted to the front of Yang Qindong. They were ecstatic to receive the Type 92 pistol. Looking at the 3 people's excited faces, Yang Qindong said in an encouraging tone, You 3 have the best results. I hope you will continue to work hard. Soon I will start the ceremony. I hope you will become the first batch of officers. At that time there will be more rewards waiting for you. Yes, 6th young master, please rest assured. We will not disappoint your expectations and perform well. Very good. Lung Song, Tingshan, in the future the army will be established by you. I don't care about the number of people, but I do care about the quality. If you dare to find people to fill the numbers, then this young master will take back everything you have now and will also expel them from Lung Feng's team. 6th young master, please rest assured. We know what to do. We won't give you the chance to expel us. Lung Song and Tingshan both said solemnly. He shifted his gaze to Yu Guang. After you go back, I hope you can influence the others and lead them in a good direction. Also, tell Gao Xiong to learn how to be a soldier. The 5 instructors can teach him how to do it. He also needs to pass the test to become a member of Lung Feng. Otherwise he will be eliminated. When the time comes, he will be alone on a deserted island. After the annual meeting, I will go to the Black Dock. I hope you can bring me a different kind of navy. When the time comes, I will naturally reward you. The so-called putting people on a deserted island wasn't just something Yang Qindong said. He had already told the 40 people that if they betrayed him, he would kill them. Because of their friendship, the 6th young master wouldn't kill them. But he would send them to a deserted island to fend for themselves. 6th young master, please rest assured. I will tell Gao Xiong everything that happened in the past 3 months. I believe that Gao Xiong will know what to do. Yu Guang was very smart. He didn't call Gao Xiong boss or big brother Gao. Because he knew that from 3 months ago, he only belonged to the Yang family and listened to the 6th young master. As for the others, they were just friends. Good. Gao Xiong patted Yu Guang's shoulder to show that he was very satisfied with his attitude. Yang Qindong looked at the crowd and said with a sad tone, Everyone listen to the young master's command. Turn around and run to the place where you should go. Yes. Everyone used all their strength to let out a roar and then ran away crying. Parting is for a better reunion. The moment everyone ran out, they knew that they wouldn't be able to see the 6th young master again in a short time. But they also believed that as long as they work hard, the 6th young master will remember their names until the next time they meet. The emergency training ended. Yang Qindong ordered people to take away everything in the forest. He would restore this place to its original appearance. This place would also become a sealed memory. Then he brought Xiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and 5 of his personal guards to the Yang family's old mansion in the city. With firm footsteps, Yang Qindong knew that his fate had changed. He even brought more people with him. And for the sake of these people who believed in him, he could only bravely and firmly take every step forward. He couldn't hesitate or shrink back. New Year. The year 1445 was a sad year for the Yang family. Old Madame Yang Lucier passed away due to illness. It was as if the last half of the Yang family's sky had collapsed. But at the same time it was also a year of hope. Because of the sudden rise of the Yang family's 6th young master, Yang Qindong, and his performance in all aspects shocked everyone's eyes, allowing everyone to see new hope. Amidst the cheers of 70 to 80 people in the old mansion, Yang Qindong gave everyone a reward of 2 taels of silver. Among them, carpenter Li Xuanfu, blacksmith Wu Gang and kitchen maid Yi Qiuer each received 10 taels of silver. Everyone was so happy that they couldn't close their mouths. Even Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and the other 4 received an additional reward of 10 taels of silver each. Especially Xiao Yin, after receiving the 10 taels of silver, she hurriedly saved it up. In her words, it was reserved for the young master's marriage in the future. As the only personal maid left behind by the old madam for the 6th young master, she had to worry about this matter as well. In this regard, Yang Qindong blushed. No matter what, he was still a man in his 40s. Asking him to accept the current social customs of marrying a 15-year-old girl, or even a 15-year-old girl, felt so awkward. It couldn't even be described as an old cow eating young grass. No, early marriage and early childbirth are not good for the adults and children. This must be changed. In the future it will be 22 years old for men and 20 years old for women. Although it's still a little early, this is already a challenge to the ancient customs of the time. Chapter 20. It was just that the plan could not keep up with the changes. Tiger's Mane was only 17 years old, only 1 year older than Yang Qindong, but he was indeed going to get married. This was something that the 6th young master had personally said before. He was going to propose to Wang Feng on behalf of Tiger's Mane. Now that he had said it, he had to fulfill his promise. Otherwise he would lose the hearts of the people. Therefore, on the 7th day of the 1st lunar month, Yang Qindong arranged for Xiao Yin and the cook, Yi Qiuer, to go to the Yang manor together and bring back 2 carriages full of good things. Yang Qindong himself was not married yet, so he naturally could not propose on behalf of someone else. However, he had sent out his personal maidservants. This was a kind of attitude. Wang Feng had already met Tiger's Mane many times and had even privately arranged a marriage. Even the parents of the Wang clan knew about this matter. Moreover, the 6th young master had sent someone to personally go, so how could they not agree? They immediately picked a good date to complete the wedding on the 18th day of the 1st lunar month. When Xiao Yin and Yi Qiuer returned from their errands and saw Tiger's Mane asking for benefits, the man who had always been very tough, suddenly ran. He rushed to the front of the 6th young master, who was riding Shao Li's flying dagger in the study. He fell to his knees with a thump, and then his tears flowed uncontrollably. He. Yang Qindong naturally knew what had happened. Xiao Yin had come to report to him as soon as she returned to the old residence. All right, Tiger's Mane, do well in the future. This young master also wishes you happiness, but you must remember to treat Feng well. You must not be half-hearted. Wang Feng was a slave. For this matter, Yang Qindong had already spent a large sum of money to redeem her from the government. In the future she would be a good citizen. This was something that many people had hoped for. Now it had all come true. How could Tiger's Mane not be excited and moved? As for Tiger's Mane, Yang Qindong had planned to redeem him as well, but he refused to comply. He even said that he would follow the 6th young master for the rest of his life and would never betray him. As a result, the 6th young master didn't know what to say. In any case, in his eyes, Tiger's Mane was no longer a servant. If it was possible, he would also break the so-called merchants, slaves and lowlies records and become a commoner. Even though he was born as a Han, he was originally noble. In this life he would also strive for this ideal. In the blink of an eye, it was the 18th of the 1st month. This day was not only Tiger's Mane's wedding day, but also the day when the first issue of Yang Bao appeared. Yang Qindong had already become a celebrity in Jianghu Prefecture because of his condor shooting and Shao Li's flying dagger. Previously, he had released 100 copies of The Legend of the Condor Heroes, but they were sold out in half a day. Then, another 500 copies were released, but they were also sold out in a day. This made many people look forward to printing more copies. At this time, Yang Bao appeared. It was said that not only did it have the story of the condor shooting, it also had the latest and most popular Xiao Fei, Li Fei written records. Because of this, it became popular before it was sold. When the trial 100 copies of Yang Bao appeared in the bookstore, they were all sold out. After all, it was only 200 copper coins. It was so popular, no wonder it sold out so quickly. Seeing everyone's enthusiasm, the old housekeeper, Yang Hai, decisively began printing more copies. On the second day, 500 copies were produced, and they were also sold out in 2 hours. On the third day, 1,000 copies were printed. This way they could barely cope with the current situation. In such a big Jianghu prefecture, only 1,000 copies could be sold in a day. Hearing this news, Yang Qindong felt a wave of sadness. This was caused by the ignorance of the people. Most people were illiterate. No matter how good your writing was, no matter how attractive your story was, if everyone was illiterate, what could you do? He increasingly felt the importance of universal literacy. Unfortunately, his influence was still small, and he did not dare to take too big a step. He could only plan slowly. Speaking of influence, Yang Qindong decided to go to the illegal docks to take a look. More than 4 months had passed since Leng Feng left. At the end of May, Yang Qindong took Qiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and other personal guards, as well as craftsman Li Xuanfu, blacksmith Wu Gang, and others from Jianghu to Fuzhou. As the scale grew larger, it was no longer safe to do anything in the Yang family's old residence or Yang village. After thinking about it, Yang Qindong treated the illegal docks as his base. It was close to the sea and there were few people there. Coupled with the vigilant sentries, it was not a problem to not be discovered. Because Yang Qindong's group had many people, many carriages and many goods, it took them 7 days to reach the illegal docks. As soon as they entered, Li Xuanfu, Wu Gang and others were frightened. They saw hundreds of big men surrounding them. Their eyes were wide open, giving the impression that they wanted to eat people. The 6th young master has arrived. Tiger's Mane acted as if he did not see them, because he smelled the same aura from these people. With a loud shout, the carriage stopped and Yang Qindong, still dressed in green, stepped out. The moment he appeared, the 100 or so burly men all stood solemnly like wooden stakes. No matter how the sea breeze blew, they didn't even blink. Among these people there were familiar faces such as Gao Xiong, Yu Guang, Leng Song, Ting Shan, instructor He Yang, Song Deshang and others. There were also unfamiliar faces, those who joined later. Among them there were people who had not seen Yang Qindong before, but this did not mean that they had not heard of the legend of the 6th young master. It was likely that everyone was tired of hearing about it. Now that they finally saw the real person, they were naturally excited and curious. Good, not bad. Seeing that the group had grown significantly, Yang Qindong nodded in satisfaction, then laughed and walked forward. As he walked, he sang loudly, "Comrades, comrades are as close as brothers. Comrades, comrades are as close as brothers, I hope that you can call us together." Suddenly, the chorus of hundreds of people began. Even Qiao Yin, who had heard it countless times, hummed softly, looking at Yang Qindong's back with a face full of admiration and respect. Blacksmith Li Xuanfu and blacksmith Wu Gang finally adapted from their fear. They also finally knew that these people were the 6th young master's servants. However, the sudden appearance of so many servants still gave them a fright. After they looked at each other, they vaguely thought of something. However, when they thought about it again, they were originally servants of the Yang family. From a certain point of view, their fates had long been intertwined. Moreover, the 6th young master had treated them well. Not only did he redeem their freedom, he also gave them good status and even more money. These were all things that they did not dare to imagine before. As the saying goes, a gentleman will die for his bosom friend. Since the 6th young master thought so highly of them, what harm was there in risking their lives for this? The two of them quickly thought it through, and under the enthusiasm of the soldiers, they quickly blended into the environment. However, all the veterans knew the importance of knowledge. Regardless of whether they were blacksmiths or blacksmiths, they were all creators. If they had a good relationship with these people, they would be able to enjoy the benefits of being in a favorable position when new things appeared in the future. For a moment, everyone fought to get on good terms with the blacksmiths and blacksmiths that they brought along, which made the blacksmiths feel flattered. After Yang Qindong arrived, he first met with Gao Xiong, Yu Guang, Leng Song, Ting Shan and He Yang, the 5 instructors. Reporting to the 6th young master, Gao Xiong has completed all the tests and his results are excellent. He is fully qualified to become a member of the Cold Front. Regarding this, the 5 of us are willing to jointly vouch for him. He Yang seemed to know what Yang Qindong wanted to ask, so he volunteered to stand out. Is that so? Seeing that the 5 instructors were willing to vouch for him, Yang Qindong was very gratified. This was enough to prove that Gao Xiong had suffered and worked hard. At this moment, Gao Xiong was standing there rubbing his hands, looking like he wanted to say something but stopped. Haha. Looking at Gao Xiong's embarrassed expression, Yang Qindong laughed and casually took out a Type 92 pistol like magic and threw it over. Gao Xiong hurriedly caught it with both hands and then carefully touched the cold pistol. Then tears uncontrollably flowed out. No one knew how he had survived the past few months. When Yu Guang and the others came back, each of them brought a Type 95 pistol, and most importantly, a Type 92 pistol. At that time he who used to be the boss was envious. But when he wanted to touch the pistol, he was told by Yu Guang that he wasn't a member of the Cold Front and hadn't passed the test, so he couldn't use such an advanced weapon. Gao Xiong's reply was of course, bullshit. What a joke, he was the head of the pirates. If he wasn't qualified, then who was? So he wanted to take the pistol, but Yu Guang, who was no match for him in close combat, dodged in a flash. When Gao Xiong was about to step forward again, Lung Song suddenly moved and kicked him, making Gao Xiong feel like his bones were about to fall apart. One must know that he used to be the boss of the pirates. His body naturally didn't need to be mentioned. He relied on his martial arts to get to his position. After being kicked by Lung Song, how could he let it go? He went all out. But in just 3 moves he fell to the ground and couldn't move. This was because Lung Song knew that this person was also valued by the 6th young master. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem for him to be bedridden for half a year within 3 moves. Gao Xiong, who was pulled up by Yu Guang, felt like he had lost face. When he returned, he was depressed for a night. When he came out the next morning, he saw that many of the pirates he led were signing up for the Cold Front's test. His depressed heart came back to life. He wanted to prove that he wasn't inferior to anyone, so he signed up. For this reason, he didn't hold back and handed over the authority to command the pirates to Yu Guang. He wanted to see how the Cold Front could be so arrogant. It was only when the real training began that he realized where her confidence came from. Gao Xiong gritted his teeth and endured as he saw people being eliminated and unable to continue. Actually, the training subjects were the same, but because it was the first time He Yang, Song Deshang, and the others were leading troops, they were a little too hasty. Some people couldn't take it and got injured and were eliminated. But in the end, there were still more than 20 people who persevered. Gao Xiong was one of them. He passed the test as the overall result. Chapter 21. Thus He Yang, Song Deshang and the other 2 became his guarantor. Since then, Gao Xiong had been looking forward to the arrival of the 6th young master every day, not for anything else but to prove himself. Today she finally saw the 6th young master. She also obtained the Type 92 pistol that she wanted to touch but couldn't. How could she not cry and not run away? He patted Gao Xiong's shoulder and said, "Good job. In the future the navy will be handed over to you." This wasn't to comfort him, but because Gao Xiong had a kind of charisma that could attract others. Just from this point, Yu Guang still lacked experience, so at present, appointing him as the head of the navy was a natural thing to do. The compliment made Gao Xiong burst into tears, but no one around him laughed at him because they had also walked out like this. After comforting Gao Xiong, he went to see the new members of Cold Front. As usual, everyone was given a Type 95 pistol, which was a happy scene. At the same time, he learned from Gao Xiong that in the past 6 months, ever since they had gotten their new weapons, they had continuously defeated several nearby pirates and recruited some talents. Their numbers had increased from less than 30 people in the beginning to more than 300 people now. Of course, all the people were young and strong and had no worries, completely meeting Yang Qindong's recruitment requirements. This was something that couldn't be helped. Before they had enough strength, it would be easy to be exposed if they looked for someone with a family. One day after they had their own real base, they could look for someone with a family. Even all the soldiers had to have a family. This was a sustainable development. And this real base, Yang Qindong already had a target, which was not far from Fuzhou, Chichen City. Today, Chichen City hasn't been developed too much. The entire city's residents were only a few tens of thousands. But with a few hundred against tens of thousands, even if they won, they wouldn't be able to defend. Gao Xiong, you have to continue to expand your strength and recruit more soldiers. Is there a problem with the money? Reporting to the sixth young master, there's no problem with the money, we robbed a lot so we're still rich. When the sixth young master goes back you can take some back. Hehe, it's just that we don't have enough weapons and we don't have enough ammunition. Gao Xiong scratched his head with an embarrassed expression. With the Type 87 automatic grenade launcher, it was very satisfying to fight against other pirates. With a 6x30 scope telescope in hand, often the enemy didn't even notice them and they could take the initiative to attack. Of course, they returned with a great victory, the enemy lost before they could even react. But the problem, the consumption of ammunition was too much. Whenever there was a battle, Gao Xiong would yell, "Bomb! Bomb!" However, when the battle was over they would curse again, saying that these brats didn't know how to fight, and how many cannonballs they fired in this battle, etc. So, when the battle started, everyone didn't know what to do. As a result, close combat occurred. Even the Type 81 assault rifles were not willing to use bullets. Instead they used primitive bows and arrows. Because of this, one of their brothers was injured in a battle. They had no choice but to use guns to solve the problem. Listening to Gao Xiong and Yue Guang's report, Yang Qindong shook his head. This is wrong. You know, a soldier's life is always the most valuable, and weapons are just an auxiliary means. If there are no more weapons they can be made. If there are no more bullets they can be produced. This time I mobilized the craftsmen to solve this problem. But if a soldier loses his life, then there's nothing left, do you understand? Yang Qindong said sternly, which made Gao Xiong, Yue Guang and the others excited. They felt honored to have such a master. They also knew that in the next war, they didn't need to be too stingy with ammunition, so the safety of the soldiers would be more guaranteed. These words also imperceptibly raised the status of Li Xuanfu and Wu Gang. They believed that in the future no one would be bad to them and no one would find trouble with them. Next, in order to make Gao Xiong and Yue Guang feel relieved, Yang Qindong let Tiger's man unload the new cannons and ammunition one by one. Type 0435mm automatic grenade launcher, weight 48 Gene, length 1023 mm, effective range 1750 meters, capacity 30 rounds. Type 75-82mm recoilless cannon, effective range 2000 meters. Type 75 105mm recoilless cannon, effective range 7,400 meters. The reason why the howitzers and recoilless cannons were chosen was because the Navy's hull could withstand it. Otherwise there would be more choices. In this way, when the shells were fired, the damage to the ship would be minimal, and at least the ship would not capsize. Gao Xiong and Yue Guang were naturally excited to have 3 new types of cannons. Even Leng Song and Ting Shan were greedy when they saw this. But today's army simply did not need these things. Even if they recently recruited some soldiers from the Navy, the number of soldiers was still less than 30. These people really did not need to be equipped with such powerful cannons. The cannons are given to you. Only veterans can operate them. As for the new recruits, they can use crossbows and crossbows first. When they pass Leng Feng's assessment and become a regular soldier, then they can be equipped with guns. This is the principle, do you understand? Yang Qindong looked at the excited faces of the people and began to pour cold water on them. He absolutely could not let the new recruits touch guns. If there was any internal strife, it would be an irreparable loss. Yes, sir. Everyone replied. For the sixth young master, they all respected him very much. His words were like an imperial edict. Also, the cannons and guns are given to you, but the amount of ammunition is limited. I can't stay here for a long time. What if you use too much? Then you have to find a way to be self-sufficient. Those blacksmiths will be your suppliers. With their current abilities, it is impossible for them to make guns and cannons, but they should be able to make ammunition with some effort. In short, think of a way to get whatever they need. Other than not being able to use guns on land, you can do whatever you want on the sea. The Ming dynasty was still restricted from the sea. Naturally, they did not have to worry about doing anything that would provoke them. Therefore, it was fine even if they made a big move on the sea. Understood. Hearing that they could let the blacksmiths make ammunition, if they succeeded, the power of these weapons would be even greater. For a moment, everyone promised that the blacksmith's needs were everyone's needs. They would not hold them back. Seeing that everyone had expressed their stance, Yang Qindong was finally relieved. I'm not worried about you guys doing things. Also, clean up this area as soon as possible. At the same time, send people to investigate the situation in Crimson City. We need to get a detailed map of the city's defenses. We also need to sneak in. Once the time is right, we will take over that place. This is good, this is good. Hearing that they were going to open up a new territory, Gao Xiong was so happy that he almost jumped up. The place they were currently at was called the Black Pier. The reason why it was called that was enough to show that it could not be exposed. If they had their own island, they would be able to do whatever they wanted. They would no longer have to be on tenterhooks like they were now, afraid that one day they would be discovered and swallowed up. Seeing that everyone was so focused on the matter of taking over Crimson City, Yang Qindong knew that the morale of the troops could be used. Once the time was right, these people would be vicious wolves and would display endless strength. Alright, didn't you say that you got a few new ships? Let's go take a look. At the Bay of the Black Pier, there were 8 ships of various sizes. Among them, 2 of the larger ships were level 4 ships, and 6 were level 5 warships. From the initial 2 ships to the current 8 ships, it was proof of the efforts of Gao Xiong and Yu Guang. Regarding this, Yang Qindong praised them, but also made a request, saying that it was not enough. From the number of people to the number of warships, it was not enough. In response, Gao Xiong and Xiao Shan immediately expressed that with the addition of the new cannons, they would immediately go out to sea and become stronger. The previous Type 87 grenade launcher could shoot up to 1750 meters, and was called a mini-infantry cannon. It was powerful, but it was still a bit small. But now, with the recoilless cannon that could shoot up to 7,400 meters, they were naturally 100 times more confident. This meant that they could attack the enemy ships from a long distance. Before the people arrived, they were already scared. Then, when the Type 95 and Type 81 guns were used in close range, they would naturally be successful. Yang Qindong saw that everyone was full of confidence and also felt that it was a bit funny. Using the weapons of the future to fight the cold weapons of the present, occasionally encountering cannons, at most the cannons were the kind that loaded from the muzzle and did not have any rifling inside the barrel. It was really not a challenge. The inspection at the Black Docks allowed Yang Qindong to have a better understanding of his own strength. The number of official members who passed the cold front examination had reached close to 70, and there were still some who were passing the examination or preparing for the examination. Counting from this, it was only a matter of time before he passed the 100 mark. Perhaps not long after, the number of people would reach a few hundred or even more. At that time, he would have a certain level of self-protection. With the advanced weapons given to them, even if someone wanted to harm him, they would only be courting death. Of course, before all of this became a reality, he still had to keep a low profile and even curry favor with some people. Thinking about it, the gift that he sent to head eunuch Wang Zhen should have arrived at the capital, Beijing. The capital, also known as Shuntian Prefecture. At this moment, in a courtyard not far from the palace, the old butler Yang Hai saw the tense Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen was the eunuch in charge of the ceremony directorate under Ming Yingzong Zhu Qizhen. He was once the director of the Eastern Palace, serving the crown prince who later became Emperor Yingzong. Even the emperor, Ming Yingzong, affectionately called him Mr. It could be said that he had a stable position and held great power. Chapter 22. One day Wang Zhen saw that the founding emperor Zhu Yuanzhang had set up a plaque that read, "Officials are not allowed to interfere in government affairs." He was in a bad mood and ordered for it to be removed. The next day, everyone went to court and found that the founding emperor's letter was gone. However, they all remained silent. From this, one could see how powerful he was. Wang Zhen, date of birth unknown, was from Shaanxi's Yuzhou, present-day Hebei. He had once served the crown prince Zhu Qizhen in his studies. This person valued power and was especially concerned about how others viewed him. Thus, any official who was promoted had to give him a gift. Any official who returned to the capital also had to give him a gift. Otherwise trouble would come knocking. Speaking of which, this was related to his background. During the final years of Yongle, the imperial court issued a decree. The general idea was that any official in the education bureau of each province or city who did not perform well could be transferred to the capital to become an official. There was such a good thing? If one could not make a name for themselves locally, they could actually be transferred to the capital to become an official. Of course not. The reason why no one cared was that the job they would do after being transferred to the capital was rather special. Enter the palace to train female officials. What a joke. Even if this old man did not want to be an official, he could still be a commoner. Why would he want to be a eunuch in the palace? That's right, who would do such a stupid thing? However, there was someone who did it. He was Wang Zhen. He already had a wife and a child. Although he was not well off, he was not poor either. He could live his life peacefully. However, in his heart, there was an ambition that no one could understand. He was not sent to the palace to be a eunuch when he was young. Instead, he entered the palace after studying. He even entered the palace with a certain amount of debt. Since it was difficult for him to develop locally, he wanted to find another path. Needless to say, with his ability to observe people's expressions and patience, he really did make a name for himself. In the past, Yang Qindong did not know much about this person. However, he had a large warehouse with many historical books. Naturally, he found out about this person. After asking around, he found that it was indeed so. At that moment, Yang Qindong invited the old housekeeper Yang Hai to meet Wang Zhen. After all, Yang Hai had followed his master Yang Rong in the past and had seen the world. At that time, Wang Zhenyuan did not have the authority he had now. When he saw the three Yangs, he was always polite and courteous. It was appropriate for him to send Yang Hai, an old acquaintance, to present the gift. Yang Qindong's predecessor Yang Dong didn't know much about history. He also didn't know much about how things came to be. However, he had a large warehouse with books. There were also many ready-made books, materials, and even finished products for reference. Some things that didn't exist in the Ming dynasty could be dismantled, or reassembled. This was his biggest advantage. Naturally, he could create many new things. In Wang Zhen's home in the capital, Yang Hai saw Wang Zhen with a respectful expression, and Wang Zhen was extremely pleased. Back then, in order to win the favor of Sanyang, he had to curry favor with Sanyang on the surface, obey everything, and pretend that he did not interfere in political affairs. Every time he went to the cabinet to deliver the emperor's decree, he would pretend to be very respectful and careful. He would always stand outside the door and not enter the pavilion, which deeply moved Sanyang. Later, when Wang Zhen came to deliver the decree, Sanyang broke the custom and specially invited Wang Zhen to sit in the room. Now he needed to look up. Now that the steward of that person had changed from arrogance to deference in front of him, it was far from the arrogance he had when he followed Yang Rong around. He felt a burst of refreshing feeling. Butler Yang, speaking of which, we are old acquaintances. We have known each other for many years. Wang Zhen deliberately brought up the past to see what Yang Hai would say. Before coming, Yang Hai had already adjusted his attitude. In the past, when Master Yang Rong was still alive, he could still look down on others. However, 30 years had passed and many things had changed. Yes, I have known eunuch Wang for many years. At that time, I could see that you were extraordinary. Sure enough, it was true. Some were only sighing and even a little envious. These words made Wang Zhen feel very pleased after hearing them. The proudest thing for a person was to make those who looked down on him start to look up to him. And now he had done it. How could he not be happy? Haha. After laughing contentedly, Wang Zhen looked at the things wrapped behind Yang Hai and asked casually, "Why did you come to see me?" Without the word eunuch, it gave off a very different feeling. However, Yang Hai acted as if he did not hear it and said respectfully, "It's like this. Our family's sixth young master admires eunuch Wang's talent and ability very much. This time, when he heard that this little one was coming to the capital, he prepared a gift early and asked me to send it to you as a token of appreciation." Yang family's sixth young master? Is that the person who made the toilet bowl and wrote 2 miscellaneous books? Unexpectedly, Wang Zhen had heard of Yang Qindong. Yang Hai immediately showed a flattered expression and said, "If our family's sixth young master knew that eunuch Wang still remembered him, he would be so happy that he would not be able to sleep." Ah! Wang Zhen, who was flattered, was very happy that Yang Rong's descendant respected him so much. This is nothing. Speaking of which, the sixth young master is quite talented and has made a lot of noise. You don't know, but now the palace has started to use the toilet bowl. Even the emperor said that it was good. Is that so? Then it must be because of eunuch Wang's recommendation. Yang Hai said without taking the credit. Looking at Yang Hai, who was so sensible, Wang Zhen was happy. He liked to deal with sensible people. However, he was now more curious about what the sixth young master of the Yang family would give him. He thought that such a person should be extraordinary. In time, Yang Hai felt Wang Zhen's gaze on the gift. Immediately, he turned around and opened the package. Suddenly, 2 clear mirrors and 2 sets of beautifully packaged cosmetics appeared in the hall. This is a mirror. It can clearly reflect every part of a person's body. The effect is many times better than a bronze-level mirror. Also, there are 2 sets of cosmetics. Once a woman uses them, she can stay young forever and look even younger and prettier. There were not many gifts, only 2 items and 4 pieces. However, no matter which one it was, it could be considered a valuable gift. This made Wang Zhen blink his eyes. Excitement was already written on his face. He knew about the mirror. A few months ago, the Jianghu prefectural magistrate presented it to the emperor. At that time, Ingzong was so happy that he even went to take a good look at it every day before the court. Some of the concubines in the harem also liked it. However, it was impossible to buy it even if they had money. In order to please the emperor, Wang Zhen used some methods. He sent people from the East Palace to look for it, but there was no news. Unexpectedly, there were two of them at once. How could he not be happy? As for the cosmetics that could preserve one's youth, it was even better. If he gave it to the emperor, those concubines would fight for it. At that time, wouldn't he be the one who made the biggest contribution? Exclaiming about the effects and benefits of these gifts, Wang Zhen was very happy. Good. But where did these things come from? In response to eunuch Wang's question, our young master knows a foreigner named John. He brought these things from the sea. Unfortunately, the journey was too long, so we only got these. Our sixth young master also said that if eunuch Wang likes them, he will find a way to send more to you in the future. Before coming, he had been told not to send too many good gifts. Otherwise, the effect would be greatly reduced. Of course, Yang Hai understood the meaning and knew how to say it. Hearing that these things came from the sea, Wang Zhen suddenly understood and nodded. He was wondering why there were so many people sent out, but there were no clues. It turned out that these things did not come from the great Ming dynasty. The Ming dynasty's sea route was cut off after Jianghu. As people kept mentioning the threat of the sea, fear of the sea became mainstream, and Wang Zhen was one of them. In his view, the army of the Ming dynasty was naturally able to dominate the land, but when it came to the sea, there were too many unknowns. Now that he knew the origin of these goods, he valued these two gifts even more. These were things that came from afar, and it was rare. It also showed the importance of Yang Qindong's intentions. Good. Sixth young master is truly considerate. But do you have any requests? Wang Zhen was a smart person. It was precisely because of this that he did not believe that Yang Qindong, who had not even been to the capital, would want to send him gifts. As the saying goes, if one were to lower oneself to others, one must have a request. Seeing that Wang Zhen was in a good mood, Yang Hai knew that the time had come. He said, the Yang clan's matriarch passed away not long ago. As the youngest son, the sixth young master has to stay at home to take care of the family, so he won't be coming to the capital for the time being. However, before the matriarch passed away, she had a wish. She hoped that the sixth young master could take over the old master's mantle, work for the court, and be loyal to the emperor. She also said that if there was a chance in the future, he would learn from eunuch Wang. Wang Zhen laughed heartily. He did not believe that a good person would be willing to learn from a eunuch like him. However, since he had accepted the gift, he had to do something. Furthermore, it was such a valuable gift that he could not take it for free. This was also a kind of professional integrity. Besides, this request was not too high. He just wanted an official position. Just based on the fact that his father was Yang Rong, an auxiliary minister of the five dynasties, his family should have been treated with evil. Alright, this duke understands. If there is a chance, this duke will ask the emperor for a job for the sixth young master. Thank you, eunuch Wang. In addition, the sixth young master's Yang Bao is about to enter the capital, but there are some people who criticize it, saying that some of the things written in it are not Confucian. But in truth, most of it records matters of loyalty to the emperor, as well as the glorious achievements of my great Ming dynasty. It is accompanied by a few fabricated stories to make people laugh. Speaking of which, this is just something that the sixth young master casually wrote. It has no other meaning than to make a name for himself. Sir, you also know that the sixth young master is only 16 this year. In addition, 20% of it belongs to eunuch Wang. Chapter 23. Yang Hai recalled that the Yang Bao had followed him into the capital, so he decided to foreshadow this matter and report it in advance. Of course, according to what Yang Qindong said, privately running a newspaper could be a big or small matter. It mainly depended on how it was said. Once it was just a storytelling book, it would give people a preconceived idea. As long as Wang Zhen approved of it, it would not be a big problem to implement it. It was just paying 20% of the benefits. In the long run, it was worth it. When he first heard Yang Qindong's instructions, Yang Hai was shocked by the sixth young master's generosity. He directly gave away 20% of the benefits. Only a person with great courage would be able to do it. He even saw the sixth young master's boldness from this matter. He hated that he was old and could not follow the sixth young master for too long. Otherwise he would definitely bask in the glory of the sixth young master. But fortunately his son Yang Neng was also capable and young. He could follow the sixth young master in the future. Presumably he would not have to worry about food and clothing in the future. He told Wang Zhen about the Yang Bao and said that he would give 20% of the benefits. Suddenly Wang Zhen's eyes narrowed and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Okay, I will pay attention to this matter. Yang Hai knew that since Wang Zhen said that he would pay attention to it, there would be no problem. He immediately expressed his gratitude again and then tactfully left. When there was no one else in the room, Wang Zhen's face returned to its serious state. Come. After the voice fell, a person flashed out of the dark room. He was wearing a flying fish robe and holding a spring-embroidered saber. He half knelt and said, I will listen to your orders. Ji Guang, immediately go and investigate the Yang Bao. See what it is, who is against it and who is supporting it. Investigate clearly and report back to me. Wang Zhen's eyes narrowed into a line. Without investigation there was no right to speak. He would not let things go just because he accepted some things from Yang Qindong. He believed in the conclusion of his own investigation. Ji Guang was his private party. He was originally the commander of Long Qing's right guard, Qianshi. Later he was promoted to Governor Qianshi. Because it was convenient to use him, he was transferred to the position of Qianshi in the Brocade Guards, a lower third-rank official. It was worth mentioning that in the first month of that year, the hereditary position of eunuchs was officially implemented. Yingzong gave Wang Zhen's nephew Wang Lin the commander of the Imperial Guards, Qian Liang, Gao Rang's nephew, Gao Yu Chao Jishang's brother Chao Zheng and Kai Zhong's nephew Kai Gu. The emergence of this system raised the status of the eunuchs to almost the same as the important ministers. Without a doubt, Wang Zhen was the boss of these people. Naturally, his subordinates would carry out his orders unconditionally and do their best. Wang Zhen wasn't worried about being deceived by Ji Guang's investigation. This was also because it was his first time dealing with Yang Qindong, so he had to be careful. This subordinate understands. Ji Guang replied, then retreated without any signs of life. Wang Zhen was left alone in the hall. He smiled and said, the sixth young master Yang Jitong Yang Qindong. Interesting. Haha, if you abide by the law, I won't be stingy and give you a good fortune after accepting your gift. With Yang Hai's appearance in the capital, Yang Bao soon appeared here. In order to make it easier for the people in the capital to read, it started from the first issue. The appearance of Legend of the Condor Heroes and Xiao Li's flying dagger naturally attracted the attention of the people in the capital who were lacking in spiritual food. This was because of the geographical location. Yang Bao was already so famous in Jianghu, but because it was too far away from the capital, no one knew about it. This was unlike the modern age where the internet was so developed that even the smallest matter could be hyped up and made known to everyone. The sudden appearance of Yang Bao attracted the attention of many people, but at the same time, it was not well received by some people. They discussed in private about the nature of this report and what it could be used for. It was just that the emperor hadn't said anything, so they couldn't make up their minds and didn't know what to do. Yang Qindong, who had returned to Jianghu Prefecture from the Black Wharf, had been paying attention to the movements in the capital. Yang Bao was nothing more than a test. At this time, there was no intellectual property right, and there was no way to guide public opinion. He didn't know whether this thing could gain a foothold in the capital. But he knew that if the great Ming dynasty couldn't accept this, he had to be more careful and cautious in the future. It was even debatable whether he would have a trip to the capital in the future. Under Yang Qindong's attention, the wheel of history continued to turn as usual. On the 14th of July in the 11th year of the Zhengtong dynasty, Yang Pu, the last Yang of the three Yangs, died. Yang Pu's death meant the end of the three Yangs era. Some of their original forces began to suffer a blow, and some forces that wanted to replace them began to stir. More than a month after Yang Pu's death, the incident began to break out. Unexpectedly, Yang Bao, which seemed to have gained a foothold in the capital, was the first to bear the brunt. On this day in the main hall, there was a sudden condemnation against the descendants of Yang Rong. When Yang Rong was in power, he was known as Dong Yang. He was the Minister of Works, Assistant Minister, Grand Secretary and other positions. Naturally, he had great power. Therefore, he promoted some people, but there were only so many positions, so he naturally offended a group of people. Because of this, many people were upset, but they didn't have a chance. Now that Yang Pu was dead and the three Yangs were in decline, there were naturally some people who hit him when he was down. Some people even mistakenly thought that their actions should be in accordance with Wang Zhen's wishes. Because in the third year of the Zhengtong dynasty, there was a fierce struggle for power in the court. The leader of the eunuchs, Wang Zhen, took advantage of the child Yingzong's ignorance and companionship to lure him to play, and then presented him to his playmate to win his favor. With this favor he went up against the three Yangs. This caused Grand Secretary Yang Shiqi to not attend court. When the Empress Dowager found out, she beat Wang Zhen up and ordered him to apologize to the Yang residents. Wang Zhen held a grudge in his heart and used his vicious methods to make a fuss about the son of the three Yangs. He sued the son of the second Yangs and his friends for taking bribes for personal gain, causing a huge uproar and ruining the reputation of the second Yangs. Under Wang Zhen's desperate investigation, the second Yangs died of anger and depression, leaving Yang Pu as the head to take charge of the court. Now that even Yang Pu was no longer around, wasn't it the best time to step on the descendants of the three Yangs? Yang Bao was the unlucky one that came to the muzzle of the gun. Niheng was one of the people who had been suppressed by the three Yangs. Perhaps his vile nature was seen through early on, but he who felt good about himself had always been suppressed. It wasn't until later on that he sucked up to Wang Zhen that he rose step by step, becoming the Minister of Imperial Affairs and Assistant Minister of Revenue, becoming a rank 3 official. Knowing that Wang Zhen once had a conflict with the Sanyang family, Niheng was eager to show off. He did not ask for Wang Zhen's permission in advance and suddenly attacked the Yang Pao in the court assembly. He even said that the private publication was a troublesome matter, and that it would lead to a disaster in the end. When the officials, including Ying Zong, were all confused, Niheng said that the reason why Yang Bao appeared and was discussed by everyone in the streets and alleys of the capital and was even sought after by a portion of people was because it had a dark background. This dark background was the Minister of Personnel Wang Ji, the Right Assistant Minister, Zhao Xian, and the others. It was because they had received Yang Rong's favor that they secretly supported Yang Bao in the name of repaying his kindness. Niheng's sudden move stunned Ying Zong, the officials, and even Wang Zhen. Everyone knew that Niheng had relied on Wang Zhen to get to his position. Because of this, everyone thought that it was Wang Zhen's idea. Many people immediately shut their mouths, afraid that they would be implicated. Wang Ji and Zhao Xian originally didn't want to speak, but this matter involved them, so they had no choice but to speak up. Niheng, you are slandering me. It's only because you did things unfairly that I couldn't help but say a few words to you. You are taking revenge here. Your actions are too vulgar. Besides, when have I ever had any contact with the sixth young master of the Yang family? I don't even know him, so what you are saying is nonsense. Zhao Xian walked out from the group with a face full of indignation. Many people knew that there was a grudge between Niheng and Zhao Xian, the director of the Ministry of Appointments. Niheng framed Zhao Xian because of his grudge. Yang Bao was just an innocent bystander. However, there was one person who saw it very clearly. He was the Ministry of Personnel Minister Wang Ji. Wang Ji had replaced Guigu as the Ministry of Personnel Minister in the 8th year of Zhengtong and was in charge of all officials. Since ancient times, the Ministry of Personnel had a saying that officials were one level higher. Those who were able to occupy this position were all cautious and conscientious people. This time he was suddenly reprimanded by Niheng in front of the court because he had a good relationship with Zhao Xian, the director of the Ministry of Appointments. Since he had made a move on this person, if he did not take care of himself, it would not be long before he would be implicated by the counterattack. Thus he had implicated himself. After thinking through the crux of the matter, he was worthy of being a minister. He didn't argue with Niheng like Zhao Xian. Instead, he stood out and said solemnly, I did not know about the matter of Yang Bao. It's just that I've read a few magazines recently, and it's just that there are 2 interesting stories in them. They also talked about the might and glory of our dynasty and did not do anything to harm the country. I once thought that the person who created this newspaper was very talented. Later, I learned that it was done by the youngest son of Scholar Yang. I was even more impressed that Duke Yang had a successor. Thus, I boldly suggest that the court should promote more talented young people to be used by the country. After speaking, Wang Ji placed the ceremonial tablet on the ground. Then he knelt down and buried his head deep in the ground. He saw the crux of the matter with one glance. Didn't you, Niheng, attack me with the dark background of Yang Bao? Then I will solve the problem from the root and clear the name of Yang Bao. Let's see what other tricks you have. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.